Chapter 2387. Trap. A burst of razor-sharp sword light also exploded from Ling Han's body, blocking the attack of the Green Song Divine Sword. He was completely unscathed. How could the ancestor of the Kong clan not be astounded? That was a divine sword. It was a sword that could slice through anything. Now, however, it had actually failed to kill Ling Han. How was this possible? Was this brat so freakish that he could even rival celestial kings? Ling Han charged over with Divine Demon Sword in hand. It was none other than the Divine Demon Sword that had blocked the sword chi of the Green Song Divine Sword. Otherwise, even with a physique as freakish as his, there was no way that Ling Han would dare to face the attack of a celestial tool head-on. That would be no different from suicide. The ancestor of the Kong clan refused to accept this, and he continued to swing the Green Song Divine Sword again and again. He attacked Ling Han in wild fury. Pang! 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 Ling Han brandished his Divine Demon Sword to parry these attacks, blocking the bursts of deadly sword chi. Even though the Divine Demon Sword wasn't a celestial tool yet, its material had already reached the level of divine metal. In any case, the Green Song Divine Sword couldn't unleash the true might of celestial kings, so there was actually little difference in might between the two swords. Why, you also own a celestial tool? The ancestor of the Kong clan stammered in disbelief. He was truly flustered at this moment. The Green Song Divine Sword was his ultimate trump card, yet Ling Han was actually able to rival it? How could he not be flustered? This was a celestial tool, something that even celestial kings didn't necessarily possess. How could such a measly immortal palace tier elite obtain one? If he knew that Ling Han not only possessed a celestial tool, but that the Divine Demon Sword even had the potential to become a heavenly Venerate tool, perhaps he would pass out in fright. In fact, Ling Han already possessed a heavenly Venerate tool. It was just that this heavenly Venerate tool was severely wounded at this moment, meaning that he couldn't use it for a very long time. Ling Han charged over, brimming with might as he slashed down with his Divine Demon Sword. Clang, clang, clang. His sword violently clashed with the Green Song Divine Sword. If outsiders saw this, they would definitely be transfixed with shock. This was because two non-celestial king tier cultivators were actually wielding a celestial tool each. Many celestial kings would be utterly embarrassed and humiliated by this sight. Pang! After blocking 7 strikes, the ancestor of the Kong clan was finally unable to endure anymore. He started to vomit blood. He hurriedly retrieved some alchemical pills to ingest, and his aura started to recover in no time. In fact, it became even stronger than before. It was clear that these alchemical pills did more than just heal him. Beyond that, they could even elevate his battle prowess. However, could a person's battle prowess increase for no reason at all, especially at the ascending origin tier, where even advancing a slight amount was unfathomably difficult? Ling Han was now certain that the Kong clan had definitely uncovered the treasure storage of some grand alchemist. Otherwise, how could they possess so many alchemical pills? Moreover, these were all extremely high-level alchemical pills. In any case, under Ling Han's relentless attacks, it wasn't long before the ancestor of the Kong clan started to show signs of struggle again. This time, he couldn't ingest any more alchemical pills. It wasn't that he had run out of them, but rather that the effects of these alchemical pills were far too potent. They could not only heal someone, but they could even unleash someone's potential. However, it was also because of this that one couldn't ingest too many of these pills. Otherwise, they would die from an overdose. However, Ling Han was far too powerful, so the ancestor of the Kong clan could only block a few strikes before suffering severe wounds again. He felt like he was about to die. Stop! Stop! He shouted as he hurriedly shot back in retreat. He tried to distance himself from Ling Han, shouting, "Young man, there's no unresolvable animosity between us, so why don't we stop here? I'm willing to compensate your friend." After uttering these words, he couldn't help but feel humiliated and vexed. Their ancestral grounds had been flattened, and their elites had been wounded and killed. Yet, he actually had to apologize to the culprit behind all of this? How could he not feel vexed and angry? However, what else could he do? If he continued to fight, it was certain that he would end up dead. "All right," Ling Han said with a nod. "At that time, you snatched a treasure map from my underling. You can return that map now. Of course, you need to return it with all the treasures that you obtained as well." The ancestor of the Kong clan wore a livid expression. This treasure map was far too important. Even after several billion years, and even though he had already obtained so many treasures, he had only managed to clear out half of the treasure storage. Moreover, the most valuable treasures still remained inside. It wasn't that he didn't want to retrieve these treasures, but rather that he couldn't. He needed a profound amount of time to undo the seals in the treasure storage. Thus, how could he hand this treasure map over? It was the foundation for the Kong clan's rise. The ancestor of the Kong clan smiled and said, "To be honest with you, I've already cleared out the entire treasure storage. As for the treasure map, I naturally burned it a long time ago." Ling Han shook his head and said, "Old man, are you trying to trick a 3-year-old with these words? If you don't hand the treasure map over, you won't live to see another day." Old geezer. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire also stepped forward. Since Ling Han had gained an upper hand, he was naturally unafraid to speak as well. "There's genuinely no treasure map to hand over," the ancestor of the Kong clan said in a sincere voice. "Then I'll retrieve it by myself," Ling Han said. He charged forward with vigor, slashing down with his divine demon sword. The ancestor of the Kong clan blocked a few strikes, yet he became increasingly unable to resist. After a while, Ling Han sent him sprawling with a punch before taking him captive. "Search his mind," the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire said. He bitterly hated the Kong clan, especially the ancestor of the Kong clan. If it weren't for this person, he would have definitely advanced to the ascending origin tier already. "No!" the ancestor of the Kong clan hurriedly shouted. He was filled with fear, and he continued, "I've already formed a seal in my mind. If someone tries to search it, it will immediately explode. You won't be able to find any secret." He was clearly afraid of death. After all, searching his mind was equivalent to killing him. Ling Han naturally wouldn't trust him so easily. He placed a hand on his head, and sent a wisp of his divine sense inside. It wasn't long before he discovered that the ancestor of the Kong clan was indeed telling the truth. His mind was protected by seals that would self-destruct upon contact. "Don't even dream about trying to interrogate me, either. Under the effects of these seals, it's impossible for me to reveal any information regarding the treasure map. Once I speak, my mind will crumble into pieces," the ancestor of the Kong clan said. Ling Han frowned upon hearing this. He hadn't expected the ancestor of the Kong clan to be so ruthless to himself. "However, I can take you to that treasure chamber," the ancestor of the Kong clan said. With a quick turn, the ancestor of the Kong clan surprisingly made a concession. That treasure chamber was extremely dangerous. After several billion years, he had only managed to undo half of the restrictions there. Meanwhile, the remaining restrictions were even more terrifying. Trying to undo them would take a profound amount of time. At the very least, he was extremely familiar with this treasure chamber. As long as they entered together, he was confident that he could trick Ling Han and the others to their death. This was a trap. This was his key to transforming defeat into victory. Ling clan gazed at the ancestor of the Kong clan. He was naturally aware of what this person was planning. However, he was unsure of just how dangerous this treasure chamber really was. However, would he falter in the face of danger? Ling Han smiled and said, "Fine. Then I'll be troubling you." Ling Han, the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire, hurriedly exclaimed in warning. The attitude of this person had changed far too quickly. He was definitely scheming something sinister. "If you're too scared to go, then there'll be no treasures for you," Ling Han said with a chuckle. "Me? Too scared?" The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire had a quick temper, so he immediately straightened his body and announced that he was going to go. However, he was no fool either. Since even the ancestor of the Kong clan could retrieve treasures from there, someone as powerful as Ling Han would naturally be fine as long as he was careful. Even so, they naturally couldn't be careless when entering such a dangerous place. Ling Han and the others made some preparations first before following the lead of the ancestor of the Kong clan to the treasure chamber. Only after setting off did the ancestor of the Kong clan reveal that the treasure chamber was located far away in the seven majestic heaven. Chapter 2388. Advancing Physique. Ling Han was astonished as he glanced at the ancestor of the Kong clan. This old man was truly good at hiding things. The treasure chamber was in the seven majestic heaven, Yet he had situated the clan in the scorching flames heaven. There were a whopping 3 heavenly realms between these 2 places. Couldn't he have situated the clan somewhere closer? At least somewhere in the same heavenly realm. However, this was naturally an arrangement made in order to keep the secret. The sudden rise of the Kong clan had been far too unnatural. Anyone could see a problem. In fact, it was certain that members within the clan had also grown greedy and restless, yearning to take the treasure chamber for themselves. Thus, the ancestor of the Kong clan had decided to build the clan in the scorching flames heaven. That way, no one would ever suspect that the treasure chamber was located in the 7 majestic heaven. Otherwise, would it not be simpler to build the clan in the 7 majestic heaven? That way, it would definitely be easier to travel to and from the treasure chamber. Judging from this, it was clear that the ancestor of the Kong clan was a careful and meticulous person. It was also no wonder that he had placed seals in his own mind. However, it was also clear that this treasure chamber was definitely a profound place. It was because of this that the ancestor of the Kong clan was so unbelievably careful. Ling Han was completely unafraid. He was simply filled with eagerness and anticipation. It was genuinely possible that this was the treasure chamber of a 5-star alchemist. It was genuinely possible that he would find Celestial King tier alchemical pills inside. In order to save time, Ling Han drew most of the people into his spatial god tool. Without the Black Tower, he felt that things were much more troublesome than before. After all, spatial god tools weren't exactly safe places to stay inside. They could be shattered very easily. It would be much better if he could forge them from divine metal. Ling Han turned his attention to the green song divine sword. However, this was a divine sword. It was one matter that one couldn't unleash its full might if the sword didn't recognize them as its master. However, if he wanted to dissect or damage it, the sword would definitely unleash its might by itself. This was the grand power of a celestial king. Who dared to challenge it? At the very least, Ling Han wasn't keen to face it. However, Wally was extremely eager, and he wanted Ling Han to obtain the green song divine sword for him. He said that Ling Han owed him this. You need 100 million years just to digest that one scroll, so giving it to you is definitely a waste. I'll look after it in the meantime. Rest assured, I definitely won't steal your things. Ling Han said in righteousness. Oh, that's right. Are you able to eliminate the Celestial King symbols on the sword? If these Celestial King symbols were destroyed, the Celestial tool would be reduced to nothing more than a sharp weapon. It would only possess the innate might of divine metal, and it would be unable to unleash the power of Celestial Kings. In the eyes of others, this would be a humongous waste. It would be a case of neglecting the essentials to attend to the trifles. Why was a Celestial tool freakish? It was exactly because of these Celestial King symbols. Only divine metal could withstand such power, and all other materials would crumble under the magnificent power of Celestial Kings. Wally nodded and said, My body can automatically extract all fundamental matter. Can I learn this skill? Ling Han shamelessly asked. No, you can't, Wally replied with a shake of his head. My body is constructed from superstring materials, allowing me to possess an incredible recovery ability. Ling Han had indeed witnessed this ability before. He had managed to recover even after being smashed to pieces by the large black dog. Moreover, it was as if he hadn't experienced any wounds at all. Upon seeing this, the large black dog had thirsted for such an ability. However, it was a shame that it couldn't be taught. Ling Han shook his head. He might as well go and play with Little Terror. It was recultivating using the cultivation system of the celestial realm, and it had to be said that its progress was as slow as could be. This was naturally because it was formed by the heaven and earth of the foreign realm, meaning that it was born to fight for the foreign realm. Now that it had come to the celestial realm, it was naturally being targeted and suppressed to a great degree. If it weren't for Wally performing some surgery on Little Terror, changing some things and teaching it some other things, Little Terror would very likely have been immediately targeted and killed by heaven and earth upon entering the celestial realm. Ling Han accelerated time for Little Terror, allowing it to develop quicker and advance to the expected cultivation level quicker. No matter what, it at least needed to return to the ascending origin tier. Speaking of returning to the ascending origin tier, after traveling for 7 days, Ling Han also felt like he had accumulated enough experience and comprehension. He couldn't find a single flaw in his cultivation. Even Wally nodded in agreement. This was naturally thanks to the heavenly Venerate blood. Otherwise, Ling Han might have needed to cultivate for dozens of years more before advancing. He unleashed his cultivation, and resolutely invited heavenly tribulation. Half a day passed, and Ling Han descended from the sky, unscathed. He got the others to obtain a carriage, and he sat inside to comprehend Tao. After his facing heavenly tribulation, a wealth of enlightenment had burst into his mind. This was mainly because the heavenly Venerate blood had fused together with the indestructible Heaven Scroll. After reaching such a cultivation level, trying to advance his physique and divine sense with the indestructible Heaven Scroll no longer relied on cultivating in seclusion. Instead, it required a vast amount of natural treasures. However, even though Ling Han had obtained the resources of so many ancestral kings, he was still extremely tight on resources. After all, few ancestral kings would keep all of their belongings in their spatial god tool. In any case, during such intense battles, how could the spatial god tools of the ancestral kings have withstood the might of fellow ancestral kings or even heavenly venerates? Many of them had naturally been destroyed, with their contents disappearing into the void. Ling Han's physique was indeed advancing. However, it was doing so at a snail's pace. After facing heavenly tribulation, however, he had unexpectedly activated the heavenly Venerate blood. This made him feel like his physique could advance to a new height. Just what kind of beings were heavenly Venerates? These were beings who were transcendent above regulations. Just a single drop of their blood was unfathomably valuable, to say nothing of a handful. It was far more useful than any natural treasure. However, heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had been afraid of killing Ling Han, so he had slowed down the effects of the heavenly Venerate blood. After being stimulated by heavenly tribulation, however, this blood had unleashed a small portion of its power. Ling Han was slowly enveloped by a thick cocoon. Its surface was golden yellow, and it more so shimmered with 18 different colors. It radiated with a paramount might. In the presence of such might, the others couldn't advance at all. They didn't dare to move this cocoon, so they could only pause their trip. Several days passed, and the golden cocoon finally cracked apart. Ling Han soared into the sky, his body completely naked. However, no one could see him clearly. This was because he was shrouded in colorful light that pulsated with an astonishing aura. "Ah, my eyes!" the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire exclaimed as he hurriedly turned around. Even though he couldn't see clearly, he was naturally aware of Ling Han's current state. He had actually seen the naked body of another man. He could barely contain his emotions. "Pah!" The Empress immediately smacked him to the floor. He actually dared to shun the body of her man? Was he tired of living? Being able to witness it was his fortune. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire could only hide his grief. He knew just how prideful the Empress was. Trying to reason with her would be completely futile. Thus, he had no option but to swallow his emotions. In any case, who told him to voice his feelings? Ling Han retrieved some clothes from his spatial god tool before descending to the ground. He was beaming from ear to ear. "How do you feel?" The Empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching maiden Ro asked as they gathered over. Meanwhile, his other wives all remained in the spatial god tool. They were all filled with eagerness. Ling Han had actually been shrouded in colorful light. This was a phenomenon unique to celestial kings. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I'm still nowhere near the level of celestial king." The colorful light had appeared due to the heavenly Venerate blood. "You're not far off," Wally said. Green light scanned Ling Han up and down, and he continued, "Right now, your defense index has reached 4,800. Once it reaches 5,000, that will correspond to your so-called celestial king tier." This was absolutely terrifying. One had to realize that celestial kings could only gain such a powerful defense after channeling the power of regulations. However, Ling Han's physique alone had already reached such a stadia it was eternal. Comparing the two, it was easy to see just how freakish he was. Ling Han was also just learning of this. He only knew that his physique had advanced by a considerable amount, and that it was still unable to withstand the might of celestial tools head-on. However, he hadn't realized that the gap was already so small. Chapter 2389. Jiu Quan. The ancestor of the Kong clan was also listening in beside them, yet he couldn't make head nor tail of what was going on. What defense index? However, he at least understood that Ling Han's physique was incredibly freakish. It was almost at the Celestial King tier. Fortunately, it hadn't reached the Celestial King tier yet. Otherwise, the restrictions in the treasure chamber might not be able to wound him. Of course, it was also possible that these people were purposely lavishing praise onto Ling Han, with the intention of warning him not to have any dangerous thoughts. If that were the case, their attempts were in vain. They continued their journey. Ling Han and the Empress successfully unlocked a higher cultivation limit, so they could naturally start to cultivate source power again. This was truly a long process. Even with the blood essence of ancestral kings, they could only shorten this process by 10-fold to 100-fold, but it would still require a shocking amount of time. They didn't hide their tracks. In any case, it would have been extremely difficult to hide. This was because they needed to use numerous transfer formations, so the chance of being discovered was very high anyway. Thus, after traveling for around 2 months, their path was finally blocked by someone. It was an ordinary-looking young man. He was dressed in coarse clothes, and even though he was clearly young, he had a weathered and worn look. It was as if he had suffered far too much grief, causing his expression to become one of perpetual melancholy. He was obstructing Ling Han and the others' path, and he had even placed a large boulder in the middle of the road. He sat atop this boulder with his eyes half closed. However, this still couldn't hide his expression of melancholy. "I'll go." The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire volunteered. He had already made a full recovery. Ling Han had refined some top-notch healing alchemical pills for him, and it was naturally very easy to heal the wounds of a measly immortal palace tier cultivator. Moreover, Ling Han was extremely generous to his friends, so he had even given the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire a significant amount of ancestral king blood. This greatly increased his cultivation speed, causing his battle prowess to also become much superior to what it had been before. Thus, he was itching to test himself out. Ling Han smiled and said, "You want to go? Perhaps even 10,000 of you won't be able to rival a single finger of this person." The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire naturally didn't believe this. "Brat, are you belittling me?" "He's speaking the truth," the young man on the boulder suddenly said. He opened his eyes, and they were surprisingly a haze of white. It was as if he were blind. However, possessing the ability to easily defeat the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, he was definitely an immortal palace tier elite at the very least. That being the case, how could he not heal his eyes? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was infuriated. So be it if Ling Han belittled him. He could treat this as banter between friends. However, who the fuck did this person think he was? Ling Han looked toward the youth and asked, "You are?" "Jiu Quan," the youth replied apathetically. "I possess everything, yet I always lack joy. I'm unable to attain perfection, so I'm called Jiu Quan 1. Hu Niu was extremely curious, and she asked, "Why not Jiu Mei 1? Jiu Quan glanced at Hu Niu and replied, "Because Jiu Mei is my junior sister 1. "Alrighty then. It's a pair of weirdos. Don't try to change the topic. Am I really that weak?" The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire asked, unwilling to accept this. Jiu Quan stood up, and a devastating aura instantly surged forth. This was the unique aura of an ascending origin tier elite. His source power pulsated, easily resonating with the regulations of heaven and earth. This was because source power was the fundamental power of the world, so it was naturally closer to the regulations. Consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Ling Han said. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire immediately shut up. To say nothing of an ascending origin tier elite at the consummate level, even one at the small accomplishment could easily kill him 10,000 times over. "I think we've met before?" Ling Han said with a smile. "No, we haven't," Jiu Quan replied with a shake of his head. "So there's no animosity between us?" Ling Han asked. "No," Jiu Quan replied with another shake of his head. "Then why are you blocking our path?" Jiu Quan sighed and said, "I can't go against Master's commands." "Oh." Ling Han nodded and asked, "Who's your master?" "Arduous Law Celestial King," Jiu Quan replied in a respectful voice. "Never heard of him," Ling Han said with a shake of his head. "Then you've definitely heard of my Grandmaster's esteemed name," Jiu Quan said. His eyes lit up, and it was as if an arc of raging lightning were shooting across the clear sky, forcing the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire to involuntarily squint. "He's the Zhou Heavenly Venerate." The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was astounded. He was naturally aware of the existence of Heavenly Venerates now. This Jiu Quan person was actually the grand disciple of a Heavenly Venerate? This was far too terrifying. He hurriedly opened his eyes, only to see Ling Han taking a step forward. His body leaned forward, and 2 gashes had already appeared on the sleeves on his forearm. These were clean cuts that had clearly been left by a sharp weapon. He then looked at Jiu Quan, only to see that a sword had appeared in his hand at some time. Right now, he was slowly sheathing this sword. With a crisp clang, the sword fully slid into its sheath. Whoosh! Ling Han's sleeves were completely severed, and they slowly drifted to the ground. However, there wasn't a single scratch on his arm. It was clear that in the split second that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had closed his eyes, Ling Han had already exchanged a strike with Jiu Quan. In fact, they might have already exchanged several strikes. However, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire hadn't noticed these exchanges at all. If he hadn't opened his eyes to witness them, perhaps he would have thought that he had simply blinked and not missed anything at all. He drew a sharp breath. Just how powerful were these 2 people? Very well, you're worthy of being my opponent, Jiu Quan said apathetically. He possessed everything but the feeling of joy. He would never smile either. I'm at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and you're at the small accomplishment. I'm only 2 minor levels above you. These were the words of Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. They could target Ling Han as long as they were no more than 2 minor levels above him. Even the grand disciple of a Heavenly Venerate was being so careful, so it was clear that Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had truly made a name for himself during that battle. He had also announced to the world that the Celestial Realm had a 4th Heavenly Venerate, one who was incredibly powerful and assertive. Ling Han clasped his hands behind his back and said, "Then come, let's spar." The 2 of them soared into the sky. In no time, the sky was immediately filled with astonishing explosions. Deafening booms surged over, and it was as if the sky were rumbling with thunder. Everyone was gazing up at the sky. However, apart from Hu Niu, the Empress, and Bewitching Maiden Ro, the 3 ascending origin tier elites, no one else could see the battle clearly. The ancestor of the Kong clan couldn't see it clearly, either. This was because his cultivation had been sealed. However, he silently prayed that Jiu Quan could kill Ling Han and his companions. That way he could finally break free. Of course, he was also slightly worried. What if Jiu Quan chose the path of violence and killed him as well? However, it wasn't long before the explosions in the sky ceased. Peace and tranquility returned. Whoosh! A figure shot down. It was none other than Ling Han. He fled, Ling Han said. He squinted as he gazed into the distance. He had to admit that Jiu Quan was indeed a worthy opponent. He was extremely powerful. However, thanks to Ling Han's freakish physique, Jiu Quan could only be suppressed and pummeled. Thus, he naturally chose to flee. As the grand disciple of a Heavenly Venerate, he was indeed superior to most others. If Ling Han hadn't obtained the Heavenly Venerate blood and advanced his physique, the outcome of this battle would have been much harder to determine. After all, Jiu Quan possessed an advantage of 2 minor levels. By the looks of it, this won't be a peaceful trip, Ling Han said with a shake of his head. Their location had already been exposed, so the elites from the 3 Heavenly Venerate lineages would definitely continue to hunt them. However, as long as he wasn't attacked by a celestial king, Ling Han was genuinely unafraid. They continued to advance. Sure enough, they were met with a wave after wave of attacks. Some came alone, while others came in groups. However, they were all beaten back by Ling Han. Some were even killed on the spot, serving as a warning to the others. Several months passed, and they had already entered the 7 majestic heaven. They had also traveled through the final transference portal. At this moment, they only had the final stretch left to travel. Ha! Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. This was because 2 groups of people were engaged in a bloody battle before them. Moreover, the surroundings were already littered with corpses. Chapter 2390. Human Traffickers. When Ling Han and the others arrived, the battle was already drawing to a conclusion. One side only had 3 people remaining, while the other side was still strong in numbers. They had already gained an absolute advantage, so exterminating their opponents wouldn't take much longer. This is the business of the Black Wind faction. If you know what's good for you, then piss off. A person from the more numerous side roared at Ling Han and the others. He wore a murderous expression. The situation seemed extremely clear. A group of mountain bandits was currently robbing another group, and Ling Han and the others had coincidentally come across their skirmish. However, was this truly a coincidence? During their journey, they had been hunted by far too many people. Even though they had all been beaten off, it was exactly because of this that they were even more cautious. Perhaps they had realized the futility of attacking them head-on, so they were trying out other tactics now. However, Ling Han was unafraid. He smiled and said, "What kind of business is this? Why don't we get rich together?" The members of the Black Wind faction all faltered upon hearing this. Were these people provoking them on purpose? Or were they truly this stupid? One of the bandits saw Hunyao and the others, and he couldn't help but gulp in lust. These 3 women are fairly fine. Go and test them out. 3 bandits instantly leaped forward, swinging their broadswords at Ling Han, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, and the others. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was extremely pissed off. What in the world had he done? Why were these people randomly attacking him? Did he look like a pushover? He immediately charged forward. Pang pang pang. With a single punch from him, the 3 bandits were all sent flying, drawing a wonderful arc in the air before heavily thudding on the ground. Because these people were evil and merciless bandits, he hadn't held back at all. He had unleashed a fatal attack. They were only measly Genesis tier cultivators, and they hadn't even advanced to the Severing Mundane tier, yet they had actually dared to provoke him. His quick and brutal attack instantly terrified the remaining bandits. They screamed in fear as they fled in disarray. The 3 remaining survivors of the other group all breathed a sigh of relief. They then hurriedly thanked Ling Han and the others. "We still have urgent matters to attend to, so we'll take our leave first. When we get to Red Fruit City, we'll make sure to thank you properly," one person said. Ling Han initially hadn't planned to play the part of a hero. He hadn't planned to ask for any thank you gift, either. However, the words of this person displeased him greatly. This was far too perfunctory, no? This person hadn't given his name, nor had he given any specific location. That being the case, how would Ling Han and the others find them at Red Fruit City? He swept his gaze over them. These people were most likely merchants, and they had a total of 10 carriages of goods. When his gaze lingered over one of these carriages, tense expressions spread across the faces of the 3 people. "We're also tired after walking for so long, so we'll borrow one of your carriages to rest," Ling Han said with a smile. As he said this, he walked toward that carriage. "Good sir," the 3 people exclaimed as they obstructed his path. "Come, please use this carriage. It's the largest and the most spacious, and its interior is also the most extravagant." "Piss off," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said with a humph. With a flick of his hand, the 3 people instantly collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain. Ling Han laughed, and he praised the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire by saying, "You're becoming better and better in your role as my underling." "Piss off," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said with a ticked-off expression. When they arrived before that carriage, Ling Han reached over to open the carriage door, only to see 2 rows of women sitting inside. They were huddled together, and they all wore expressions of fear and terror. Looking closely, he could see that all of the women were bound by ropes. Ling Han instantly came to a realization. The bandits had indeed been genuine bandits. However, these merchants weren't some kind of upstanding citizens, either. They were involved in human trafficking, so it was no wonder that they had been so anxious and tried to prevent him from entering this carriage. One of the 3 people suddenly unleashed a bellow as he lunged forward and swung his broadsword at Hunyao. He knew they had been exposed, so he planned to take one of the women as a hostage. That way, he could use her to threaten Ling Han. Upon seeing this, the 2 other people also woke from their daze. They hurriedly raised their swords and charged forward. Hunyao giggled before unleashing a deafening bellow. Boom! The weapons and clothes of the 3 people all exploded into smithereens. Their skin also cracked apart, causing blood to pour down their bodies. They started to stumble around, and it was as if they were drunk. Ling Han sent the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire over to free the bound women. Meanwhile, he jumped off the carriage with a smile, and said, "You people are far too unprofessional when it comes to human trafficking. At the very least, you need to prepare a spatial god tool." The three people grumbled in their minds. If they could have afforded spatial god tools, they naturally wouldn't have taken such a big risk and gone to so much trouble. However, they were only at the Genesis tier, and they weren't familiar with the regulations of space, either. Thus, they couldn't make their own spatial god tools. Two birds of a feather. Ling Han resolutely lashed out. Pa! The three people exploded into clouds of blood. However, even though they had saved these people, they were now a burden on their group. After all, could they just abandon these frail women here? Neither Ling Han nor the others could find it in their heart to be so cruel. Thus, they had no option but to take these women home. Fortunately, the human traffickers had been low in cultivation level, so they didn't have the ability to kidnap people from too far away. As such, they managed to take them all home after just 2 days. Apart from one person. It was a small girl who was only 7 or 8 years old. She was wearing a green dress, and she was truly as adorable as could be. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been targeted by the human traffickers, either. However, the problem was that she was actually mute. This complicated things greatly. The other kidnapped women hadn't known where this young girl had come from, either. Ling Han and the others asked around in the surrounding villages, yet they couldn't find anyone who had lost a young daughter. After a while, they indeed found someone who claimed to have lost a daughter. However, Ling Han and the others discovered that this person harbored evil intentions, and was simply coveting the girl's beauty. In the end, Ling Han and the others had no option but to take her along with them. This young girl couldn't speak, so she was naturally quiet. However, her eyes were extremely lively, and at times, it even looked as if she possessed intelligence that could see through the mortal world. Ling Han and the others were quite astonished by this. Just what had this young girl experienced to possess such an expression? She was extremely peculiar, and she was always gazing into the distance. She wouldn't respond to any question, either. Ling Han and the others all clicked their tongues in wonder. This young girl was truly as pure as a pond of water. Just how had she been raised to be so bright and pretty? This made Ling Han want to take her as a disciple. However, the young girl didn't respond to anyone, so he naturally couldn't take her in as a disciple even if he wanted to. They continued on their trip. Because they had already arrived in the 7 majestic heaven, it only took them 14 more days to arrive before the treasure chamber. Of course, they had encountered several more enemies these past few days. The final few hadn't challenged them head-on, and they had instead laid traps or attempted to assassinate them. It was as if they had finally realized that they couldn't defeat Ling Han head-on. However, none of this could trouble Ling Han. His physique had almost reached the Celestial King tier, so as long as he wasn't attacked by a Celestial King, only hacking him with a Celestial tool could deal any damage. Right now, apart from the ancestor of the Kong clan, he hadn't come across another Ascending Origin tier elite who possessed a Celestial tool. In this sense, the ancestor of the Kong clan was even more impressive than those disciples of the heavenly Venerates. This was a lifeless and desolate mountain. There was nothing unique about it at all. However, none of them realized that after arriving here, the young girl Ling Han and the others called her Qing 1 because she refused to change out of her green dress appeared as if she had regained her soul. The ancestor of the Kong clan fiddled left and right. After a long while, a passageway suddenly materialized at the foot of the desolate mountain. Ling Han didn't tell the ancestor of the Kong clan to lead the way. Instead, he grabbed him in his hand. That way, he could toss him forward to block any potential dangers that they encountered. Shortly after entering, the entrance behind them automatically resealed itself. The desolate mountain returned to its original form. Chapter 2391. Breaking the Restrictions. The passageway was dark and eerie. However, following the sounds of their footsteps, the passageway started to light up section by section. Above them were pieces of jade-like rock. They could emit light, and quickly illuminated the entire passageway. The passageway wasn't long, and a large expanse of space opened up before them after a short while. They were standing in a cave atop a cliff. Before them was a stretch of buildings, situated around 3,000 meters below them. These buildings were exquisite, yet they also seemed dignified and majestic at the same time. They were all constructed from bricks and tiles, and the columns that stood among them were all engraved with dragons and phoenixes. The surrounding areas were filled with bamboo forests that gently swayed with the wind. "This is the treasure chamber," the ancestor of the Kong clan announced. "Let's go." They flew down the cliff, yet they discovered that the expanse of buildings was protected by some kind of energy barrier. They couldn't enter this place directly. Ling Han could have attempted many different things. For example, he could have hacked at this barrier with his divine demon sword. He could have also asked Wally to analyze this barrier. There were many potential ways to destroy this barrier. However, since the ancestor of the Kong clan was here, why would he go to so much effort? "Come on, lead the way." The ancestor of the Kong clan led them before the expanse of buildings. After his fiddling with some unknown thing, they could then proceed into the area unhindered. The buildings in front are all ordinary buildings. They're simply residences, the ancestor of the Kong clan said. Only the 7 buildings in the back house treasures, so don't waste your time here. Even though he said this, how could they trust him so easily? They carefully searched all of the buildings. However, just as the ancestor of the Kong clan had said, these buildings were indeed devoid of treasures. After carefully searching all of the buildings, they finally arrived before the last 7 buildings. These buildings were clearly larger than the others. Moreover, the 7 buildings were laid out in an intriguing manner, with each of them seemingly conforming and resonating with the other. This was a 7 stars arrangement, where the central building was even larger and grander. It appeared much like an imperial chamber. "How do we enter?" Ling Han asked. "According to our agreement, I've already led you people here. Shouldn't you release me now?" The ancestor of the Kong clan replied. "Heh, deciding things for yourself now, are we?" Ling Han patted the old man's shoulder. Who had agreed to this? The ancestor of the Kong clan naturally understood this as well. He started to bargain with them, saying, "Fine, if you want me to undo the restrictions, then unseal my cultivation first." Right now, he was no different from an ordinary person. "Sit aside first," Ling Han said. He naturally wouldn't concede any ground. He turned to Wally and asked, "Want some treasures? If you do, then undo the restrictions here." "You're taking advantage of me," Wally said in protest. He had surprisingly gained some intelligence. Ling Han laughed and said, "Suit yourself. If I undo the restrictions by myself, you don't need to think about getting any of the treasures. If you undo it, however, I can share some with you." After performing some calculations, Wally nodded in agreement. The women all shook their heads upon seeing this. In terms of calculation ability, Wally was truly as capable as could be. In terms of worldly wisdom, however, he was just as naive. If Ling Han undid the restrictions, the treasures would all belong to Ling Han. Then, if Wally undid the restrictions, shouldn't all of the treasures belong to him? Yet, he had actually agreed to Ling Han's proposal. In reality, everything was a trap. However, in Wally's eyes, it was extremely reasonable that he only received a portion of the treasures since there were so many people here. They were truly speechless about their husband. He would screw humans over, and he would even screw non-humans over. Wally walked forward. However, after taking a few steps, the floor suddenly lit up, unleashing a slash at him. This was a devastating attack that was at least at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Whoosh! The blade of light slashed forth, yet Wally retreated even quicker. In some sense, he was also a cultivator of body arts. He didn't draw on the power of regulations, and he instead drew on the power of heaven and earth to unleash his might. As a result, his explosive power was even greater. The blade of light flashed past, yet it struck no target. Astonishment spread across the face of the ancestor of the Kong clan. The first time he had come here, he had been filled with excitement, yet he had also been lacking in power. Thus, he had suffered extremely grave wounds after being struck by this blade of light. However, it had also been because of this that he had recognized the importance of this treasure chamber. Now, however, Wally had actually dodged this attack with such ease. This instantly made him feel displeased. Wally continued to advance, and the blades of light also slashed forth one after another. However, they all failed to strike him. After a while, Wally came to a stop, not advancing any further. At the same time, light burst from his eyes, and it was very likely that he was performing some furious calculations. After a long while, he finally opened his eyes and said, "Follow me. Don't make any misstep." He took the lead, and everyone followed after him. The ancestor of the Kong clan was still hanging in Ling Han's grip. After taking a few steps, astonishment spread across the face of the ancestor of the Kong clan. This was because Wally had genuinely undone the restrictions of this building. He was unable to accept this. One had to realize that he had paid a huge price for discovering each step. He had suffered severe internal injuries, and it had taken him tens of thousands of years to recover each time. There had been many times that he had wanted to give up because this had been a truly torturous task. However, Wally hadn't been struck a single time. With just a few attempts, he had already undone the restrictions of this place. How could the ancestor of the Kong clan not feel frustrated and irritated? However, how could he know that Wally was actually the culmination of several hundred epochs of knowledge from a higher-level dimension? If he couldn't break the simple restriction of a celestial king, what right would the dark inverse realm have to invade the foreign realm? Wally led the way, and it wasn't long before they made it inside the building. After entering, what greeted them was row after row of shelves. There were all kinds of things on these shelves, with most of them being alchemical pills. However, many of the shelves were already empty. Their contents had clearly been taken by the ancestor of the Kong clans. "Hang on," Wally said. "There's a main control hub here, and if I close it, all of the restrictions here will disappear. However, this restriction also has the effect of maintaining the freshness of the items here. After closing it, the things here will slowly decay." Ling Han smiled and said, "That's fine." Wally went over to fiddle with the control hub. After a short while he nodded and said, "It's done." Ling Han stepped forward, and sure enough, there wasn't any reaction at all. It was as if this were truly an ordinary building. The most shocked person was naturally the ancestor of the Kong clan. He had initially planned to bargain with his captors, first regaining his cultivation and then taking advantage of his familiarity with this place to trick them to lead them to their deaths. To his shock and disbelief, however, Wally's presence rendered the restrictions here completely useless. Ching Ching also fluttered her eyelids as she glanced at Wally. It was as if she were curious. Ling Han and the others swept away all of the treasures. Most of the treasures had already been taken by the ancestor of the Kong clan, but there were still many things remaining. Most of the remaining treasures were alchemical pills, but there were also some other things such as precious jade that was extremely beneficial to cultivation. These treasures were all useless to Wally. Thus, Ling Han wrote him another debt slip, promising to pay him back with divine metal and other similar items in the future. Only Wally would agree to such unfair exchanges. However, Wally didn't feel that this was unfair. He was extremely motivated as he undid the restrictions of the second building. Ling Han examined the alchemical pills. Sure enough, these were the works of a 5-star alchemist. Most of the alchemical pills had reached the 8th refinement, and a small number of them had even reached the 9th refinement. However, only a single alchemical pill had reached the 10th refinement. Chapter 2392. 7th Level. Ling Han carefully examined the 10th refinement alchemical pill, and expressions of understanding and realization would occasionally flash across his face. He had already reached the 9th refinement long ago. However, after such a long time, he was still unable to reach the 10th refinement. Thus, he was unable to become a 5-star alchemist. This was mainly because he had never seen a 10th refinement alchemical pill before. As such, he had needed to explore everything by himself. Now that there was a 10th refinement alchemical pill before him, he could naturally examine it and attain endless enlightenment. While Ling Han was busy examining the alchemical pill, Wally had already removed the restrictions of the second building. Just like the first building, this building was mostly filled with alchemical pills. However, a majority had already been taken by the ancestor of the Kong clan. Just like the first building, there were also few 10th refinement alchemical pills here. There were only a measly 2. However, they were both 4-star alchemical pills, and they weren't at the Celestial King tier. Ling Han only took the 10th refinement alchemical pills. They were extremely useful to him. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was giddy with excitement as he fervently ran around collecting the alchemical pills. However, his speed couldn't compare to that of Hunyo and the others, so he could only shout, "Leave some for me! Leave some for me!" At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. If it weren't for that bastard, I would have already become a celestial king. There were countless alchemical pills here, and his cultivation aptitude wasn't poor, either. Thus, it was extremely likely that he could have indeed become a celestial king. However, Ling Han retorted, the celestial path only opens once every 10 billion years. Even if you had obtained this treasure chamber, you'd still only have been toiling along at the ascending origin tier. Will it kill you not to taunt me? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire asked in irritation. Why did this brat enjoy taunting him so much? Was it just because he toyed with him when passing down his mystical powers at that time? Ling Han responded with a hearty laugh. Meanwhile, the ancestor of the Kong clan was on the verge of mental collapse. He had spent billions of years to empty half of this building. Now, however, Ling Han and the others had easily removed the restrictions. By the looks of it, they were truly going to empty this building in just a single day. This stark contrast truly drove him crazy. A cold chill enveloped his body. This was because he had already become useless. There was nothing he could use to bargain. If Ling Han and the others wanted to kill him, they would no longer need to hesitate. Sure enough, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire looked over. He was naturally the one who hated the ancestor of the Kong clan the most. Not only had this person snatched his opportunity, but he had even pushed him to the verge of death. We can calmly discuss things. I can return all of the alchemical pills and treasures that I took, the ancestor of the Kong clan said with a hurried chuckle. He didn't want to die at all. I don't need them, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said word by word. He reached over and made a slapping motion. Pa! The ancestor of the Kong clan was instantly flattened into a bloody pancake. Wally was definitely like a hard-working ox. He was plowing the field with no complaints at all. Before long, he had already removed the restrictions from 6 of the buildings. However, he stopped when he arrived at the 7th and final building. This is an absolute restriction. It can only be removed by brute strength, he said. Ling Han and the others were collecting treasures slower than he was removing the restrictions. Thus, they didn't pay any attention to this. Instead, they all headed to the 3rd building. Just like the first 2 buildings, this building also mainly consisted of alchemical pills. When they arrived at the 4th building, they finally discovered some precious tools. There were all kinds of precious tools, though the large majority of them had already been taken. However, there wasn't any celestial tool. They truly wondered what kind of grand fortune the ancestor of the Kong clan had struck to obtain the Green Song Divine Sword. The 5th building was much like the 4th building. However, after arriving at the 6th building, they finally discovered divine metal. This was a fist-sized hunk of purple metal. It was shimmering with color, and it looked as attractive as could be. Purple Sun Heavenly Celestial Metal, Ling Han exclaimed. Divine metal? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire asked in excitement. Ling Han nodded and replied, yes, divine metal. He had to admit that Wally was truly an honest person. Unbelievably honest, in fact. He had been the first to discover this divine metal, yet he actually hadn't taken it away in secret. After jumping around in excitement for a while, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire shook his head and said, forget about it. It's better if you give me a few ascending origin tier precious tools. Otherwise, I'm not powerful enough to possess such a treasure either. If I reveal it, I'll definitely be robbed. This was the brutal truth. If one weren't powerful enough, yet they possessed an incredible treasure, they would essentially be inviting others to rob them. Moreover, to the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, obtaining pseudo-celestial tools at the Immortal Palace tier was naturally better at this moment. After all, he could unleash their full might. Ling Han was slightly confused at this moment. He had initially thought that the original owner of this place was a 5-star alchemist. Now, however, it appeared like they were extremely skilled at tool refinement as well. Such a prodigy was extremely rare. There had been a celestial tool here, the one that had been taken by the ancestor of the Kong clan. It was now in Ling Han's hands. At the same time, there had also been 3 5-star alchemical pills. It was unlikely that the ancestor of the Kong clan had obtained any. After collecting all the treasures, they arrived before the 7th and final building. The 7 stars gathered, and this building was the central star. You can't remove this restriction? Ling Han asked Wally. No, Wally replied with a shake of his head. If one's power doesn't exceed the strength of the restriction, then there's no way to remove it. However, if one's power exceeds it, the absolute restriction will obliterate everything in the building. Ling Han was extremely curious at this moment. Of the 7 buildings, 3 housed alchemical pills, while 3 housed precious tools. Among them, there were Celestial King tier alchemical pills and also Celestial King tier tools. That being the case, what did this carefully protected building hold? They walked in a circle around the building. However, even Wally couldn't remove the restriction here, so they naturally couldn't do anything, either. After circling the building a few more times, they could only sigh in resignation. However, it was at this moment that Qing walked over. She extended her small arm and stroked the wall of the building. This young girl couldn't cause any damage to the building, and the restriction of the building only targeted the building itself anyway. Thus, her stroking the wall wouldn't lead to any danger, and Ling Han and the others let her be. Even though there's still 1 building left, we've already collected quite the astonishing amount of treasures, Ling Han said with a nod. He had obtained several 10th Refinement alchemical pills, which would greatly aid him in his endeavor to become a 5-star alchemist. Everyone nodded in agreement. They couldn't remove the restriction, so what else could they do? Let's go. They turned around and prepared to leave. However, after taking just a few steps, they suddenly heard a cracking sound traveling over from behind them. They turned around, only to see a web of cracks on the exterior of the 7th building. These cracks weren't on the building itself, but rather on its exterior. It was as if the air had solidified, and was now cracking. With a pop, the air crumbled apart like shattering crystals. The restriction is broken? Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. Just then, they had still claimed that this restriction couldn't be broken. Otherwise, if it were, it would destroy everything in the building. Now, however, the restriction had been broken, and the building was still fine. They all looked toward Wally. However, Wally also wore a confused expression. His eyes flashed, and it was clear that he was performing furious calculations. He also couldn't understand this situation. The restriction had genuinely been broken. However, no other reaction followed. Could it be because of Qing? Bewitching Maiden Rou asked. They all looked toward Qing. However, they immediately shook their heads. No matter how they looked at her, this young girl didn't appear to possess any unique ability. Since the restriction has been removed, let's go in and take a look, Ling Han said. He retrieved his divine demon sword as he walked over. He couldn't use the Black Tower, one of his biggest defensive trump cards, now. Thus, he naturally couldn't be careless facing the unknown. Be careful, the Empress warned in concern. Ling Han nodded in acknowledgement. He then grabbed Wally over and held him in front like a shield. Even Celestial Kings couldn't kill Wally, so he was naturally fit to be used as a shield. Everyone was rendered speechless. Chapter 2393. Arrival of Elites. Ling Han's words were courageous and moving, yet he was now using the pitiful Wally as a shield. This was utterly shameless. Meanwhile, Wally was filled with confusion. Why are you grabbing me? I'm scared that you'll trip, Ling Han randomly replied. Wally became even more confused, and he said, I have a strong balancing ability, so I won't trip even if I lose my center of gravity. There's no need for you to grab me. Don't worry, just treat this as me respecting elders and caring for youth, Ling Han said, continuing to make up nonsense. Others could see through his nonsense in an instant. However, Wally could only react after performing the necessary calculations. Right now, he had determined that the 7th building posed almost no danger to them at all. Thus, he was naturally confused about Ling Han's intentions. In terms of analysis alone, Wally was definitely one of a kind. Perhaps even heavenly venerates couldn't rival him. In terms of simple emotional intelligence, however, he was on the same level as toddlers. Wally wore an expression of confusion. However, he still nodded and accepted the excuse of respecting elders and caring for youth. This was because he was indeed very old. Ling Han entered the building with Wally. Qing also wanted to enter, yet she was dragged back by bewitching Maiden Rou, who shook her head and said, "It's dangerous." Qing also wore an expression of confusion as she looked up at bewitching Maiden Row. Her expression could certainly compete with Wally's. Ling Han advanced very slowly, with his divine demon sword in his right hand and his shield, Wally, in his left hand. He was extremely careful as he took each step. He didn't know what dangers lay ahead, so he naturally had to be as careful as he could. Like the maw of a gigantic beast, the inside of the building was pitch black. However, when Ling Han arrived in the depths of the building, the surroundings suddenly became bright and illuminated. The pitch-black building instantly became radiant. He squinted his eyes as he observed the surroundings. This building was completely different from what he had imagined. There were no shelves here, and there was instead a gigantic mirror in the middle of the room. Was this some kind of paramount treasure? One that needed the protection of a self-destructive restriction. Its owner had forged it, yet restricted it to this building. It was as if they were hesitant to destroy it, yet also hesitant to have others obtain it. This made Ling Han extremely curious about this mirror. He casually tossed Wally aside as he looked toward the mirror, only to see his own reflection appearing in the mirror. Looking closely, his figure disappeared, and what replaced it was an expanse of starry sky. Looking again, and the starry sky also disappeared. What replaced it was something that even Ling Han couldn't comprehend. "This is dimension coordinates," Wally suddenly exclaimed. His voice was filled with emotion. "What's dimension coordinates?" Ling Han asked. Wally pondered for a moment before replying. "For example, if we want to enter another dimension, we can only travel through the connection between the two dimensions. However, each dimension will definitely have its own weak points. If these weak points are discovered by elites, they can use their profound power to directly enter through these points." "So we can use this item to enter other dimensions?" Ling Han asked. Wally shook his head and said, "The person who created this machine possesses astonishing knowledge of the regulations of space. He found the weak point of your dimension off course. This might also be an incorrect discovery. In any case, only elites from other dimensions can arrive through here." Ling Han couldn't help but feel disappointed. Only others could arrive through here, and they couldn't use it to leave. This was truly a useless item. No wonder the owner of this place had put a strict restriction on the mirror. If it were activated, they would be inviting enemies into their house. "This item is a threat." Ling Han pondered for a moment before continuing, "We have to destroy it." The original owner most likely hadn't been willing to destroy it. After all, it was the culmination of their hard work. Moreover, this mirror was indeed an advanced tool. However, the original owner had clearly realized its threat as well. Thus, they had put a strict restriction on it in order to avoid any dangers. Wally didn't say anything. However, green light beamed from his eyes, and continually scanned the mirror. Ling Han brandished his divine demon sword, leaping forward and slashing down at the mirror. Right at this moment, however, something peculiar happened. The mirror suddenly lit up before starting to spin, becoming quicker and quicker. "Wally!" Ling Han shouted. This person didn't activate the mirror, did he? Wally didn't reply, and he continued to scan the mirror. With a roar, Ling Han raised his divine demon sword again. Swoosh! A burst of sword light swept forward, launching toward the mirror like a gigantic dragon. Wang! A terrifying aura emanated into the surroundings, and it was as if the heavens were about to collapse. The sword chi shattered with a crack before it could even strike the mirror, dissipating like a firework. Gasp! Ling Han involuntarily drew a sharp breath. This mirror was a precious tooler, as Wally called it, a machine. It could mark the location of the celestial realm for countless other realms. It was like a lighthouse. Through the guidance of this lighthouse, paramount beings from other dimensions could traverse across dimensions to arrive here. This was a weak spot that could be penetrated. Just then, Ling Han hadn't been worried. Firstly, the mirror hadn't been activated. Secondly, even if it were activated, there was most likely not an elite who was so bored that they would continue to observe the Genesis world. As such, they wouldn't realize that a lighthouse had suddenly appeared. In any case, it was unconfirmed whether this was a true weak point. At this moment, Ling Han truly wanted to curse. It appeared as if all three conditions had been satisfied. This kind of petrifying aura definitely belonged to the heavenly Venerate, such as Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. Who was this? Who was coming over? If this were a heavenly Venerate from a foreign dimension, just what kind of destructive damage would they cause? With a bellow, he started to swing his divine demon sword. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Bursts of sword chi dashed forward, dancing in the air like dragons. However, the aura emanating from the mirror was still increasing in power. The sword chi from the divine demon sword was completely unable to inhibit it. Ling Han wanted to directly hack the mirror with his sword, yet he didn't even possess the ability to approach it. This aura was so profound that even the heavens would have to prostrate. Boom! Dark clouds formed overhead, signaling the formation of heavenly tribulation. This was a reaction from the heaven and earth of the celestial realm. A paramount being was trying to enter this realm, so even heaven and earth were treating them as an enemy. The existence of heavenly venerates was transcendent above the regulations, so they were innately ruining the equilibrium already. The women and the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire also entered the building. They were stunned by what they saw. Moreover, the paramount aura that suffused the surroundings made them go weak at the knees, forcing them to collapse to the floor. Only one person was unaffected: Ching Ching. This was far too astonishing. This was the furious aura of a heavenly venerate, yet a young girl was actually able to face it with no fear? If one wanted to withstand the aura of a heavenly venerate, they had to be at least at the 8th heaven or 9th heaven of the celestial king tier. Could this young girl possibly be such an elite? Ching Ching's expression remained one of confusion. However, when she looked at the mirror, her eyes gradually became clear. A paramount aura started to seep from her body. Right at this moment, the mirror suddenly shuddered, with its surface undulating like waves. A figure appeared, and it was as if they had walked over from a profound depth. The mirror shuddered violently, and a head pushed at its surface, forcing it to stretch 30 centimeters out. It was as if they were about to break out from the mirror. However, the mirror possessed powerful elasticity, rendering the person's attempts futile. However, the person started to push with their hands as well, and with a slight burst of power. Pa! The surface of the mirror shattered all across the floor. A figure appeared where the mirror had been. Gasp! A person had genuinely traversed through the dimensions and arrived at the celestial realm. Ling Han and the others gazed over. This was a handsome person who looked to be around 20 years old. However, this wasn't important. His aura was far too profound, causing the thunderclouds above them to become increasingly dense. It was as if they were about to unleash the energy of the entire heaven and earth. Chapter 2394. I'm Zhou Heng. Aya. The young man looked up with an apologetic smile. His petrifying aura also receded like a tide. In an instant, it was as if he had transformed into an ordinary person. The tribulation of heaven and earth also lost its target, leading it to rapidly dissipate. Ling Han was astounded by what he saw. This young man was definitely a heavenly venerate. However, he could actually conceal his aura and trick the heavens? This was far too astonishing. Wally's eyes became green as he looked the young man up and down. He was acting as recklessly as one could. However, this young man seemed to have a good temper, and he swept his gaze over them before smiling, and saying, "Hi, I'm Zhou Heng, and I come from another dimension." This kind of arrival and introduction. Ling Han and the others were rendered speechless. A heavenly venerate was actually this amiable? He wasn't stating his title and sect. Meanwhile, Wally frowned and said, "Something on his body is blocking my scanning." A war soldier from the technology realm? Zhou Heng took a few glances at Wally before nodding, and saying, "Quite hard to come by. There's no guarantee that one can be created every few hundred epochs." Ling Han and the others were even more astounded. This heavenly venerate was seemingly familiar with many different dimensions. One had to realize that the Genesis world was a cruel dog-eat-dog world, where the different dimensions were always at war and trying to engulf each other. With the arrival of a foreign heavenly venerate, just what kind of devastating calamity would follow? Fellow friend, are you cultivating your mind in the mortal world? Zhou Heng asked as he looked at Ching Ching. He wore an expression of praise, and he continued, "It's extremely difficult to take the second step in super low-level dimensions. However, you're able to find a different method. Your talent is truly worthy of my praise. Ling Han and the others felt as if they were dreaming. Just how freakish were heavenly venerates. Their status was paramount, and they would often refer to themselves as this venerate. However, Zhou Heng was simply referring to himself as I or my one. This was truly inconceivable. However, Zhou Heng was actually referring to Qing Qing as a fellow friend? Fellow friend. Gasp. Ling Han and the others all drew a sharp breath. Perhaps Qing Qing was also a heavenly venerate. There were only 4 heavenly venerates in the entire celestial realm: Wu Lu, Jiu Wu, Sealed Emotions, and Green Flames. Qing Qing. Green Flames 1. Qing Qing was also looking at Zhou Heng. Her gaze was still puzzled, yet it was gradually regaining clarity. Bah! Zhou Heng suddenly unleashed a short shout, and it was as if the drums of evening and the bells of dawn were awakening one's soul. Wang! Ling Han and the others felt their minds sink before awakening again. It was as if something extra had appeared in their bodies. They couldn't describe what this was, yet it was seemingly allowing them to attain new comprehension of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Was the heavenly venerate bestowing this upon them? Qing Qing's gaze instantly became clear. Boom! A paramount aura instantly exploded from her body. At this moment, it was as if all mortals could only kneel and prostrate before her. Heavenly venerate. This was definitely the aura of a heavenly venerate. Qing Qing. No. The Green Flame's heavenly venerate unleashed her paramount aura at this moment, and she frowned as she gazed at Zhou Heng. She couldn't see through this powerful being. However, would a mighty heavenly venerate be afraid of others? Boom! Green flames erupted above her. These were flames that would cause even 9th Heaven celestial kings to tremble. Ling Han and the others bared their teeth. They had actually journeyed together with a heavenly venerate for so many days? And they had even protected her as if she were a helpless young girl? In fact, Ling Han had even wanted to take her as his disciple. According to Zhou Heng, the Green Flame's heavenly venerate had been cultivating her mind in the mortal world. Thus, by the looks of it, she had purposefully suppressed her cultivation and transformed into an ordinary human in the toilsome mortal world. Through struggles and hardships, she desired to temper her mind, and thus take that second step. Each person was a part of heaven and earth. Each person possessed the power of heaven and earth. However, it was just that ordinary mortals were unable to harness and wield this power. Each person was a treasure trove. Who are you? From where do you come? The Green Flame's heavenly venerate asked. However, she was still in the form of a young girl of 7 or 8 years old, so her voice sounded extremely childish. The contrast was extremely stark. Heaven and earth didn't tolerate heavenly venerates, so flashes of lightning lashed down at the Green Flame's heavenly venerate. However, this was naturally useless against heavenly venerates. They didn't even need to dodge it. Zhou Heng smiled faintly and said, I harbor no animosity. My reason for coming here is simple. I want to invite elites such as yourself and other young prodigies to a transcendent dimension. Go to a transcendent dimension. Dare I ask, Lord, what's a transcendent dimension? Is it even more powerful than a high-level dimension? Ling Han asked with courage. He felt like this heavenly venerate was an extremely amiable person. In fact, this heavenly venerate's personality was quite similar to his. He would be extremely friendly and easy to approach as long as his bottom line wasn't crossed. If this bottom line were crossed, however, he would be even more ruthless than others when he unleashed his fury. Zhou Heng nodded and replied, There are a total of 4 transcendent dimensions. Now, however, only a single one remains. He wore a solemn expression as he spoke. Everyone was astonished. The fundamental goal of the realm wars was to engulf other dimensions. Theoretically speaking, if this remaining transcendent dimension had managed to engulf the 3 other transcendent dimensions, it should have become invincible. As such, what was there to worry about? Zhou Heng smiled and said, Fine, let me explain this from the beginning. It will clear up your confusion. This heavenly venerate was indeed a good-tempered person. The entire Genesis world is like a snake. The dimensions exist in a linear fashion, from the strongest down to the weakest. Moreover, the oldest dimensions will slowly decay toward death. At the same time, new dimensions are also being born. This is an endless cycle of death and birth. Heng pondered for a moment before continuing. Instead of viewing it as a snake, it's better to view it as a taiji one. It's a cycle of life and death. A long time ago, each dimension in the Genesis world was completely independent. There existed no connections between them, and neither one would interfere with another. As such, there was naturally no realm war. However, at some point in time, the people in an aging dimension were unresigned to their dimension decaying and crumbling, transforming into void. Thus, they created a powerful type of Baina being called hysteria. Hysteria exists to engulf others. It exists to extract energy from other dimensions to replenish an aging dimension. Relying on hysteria, this aging dimension managed to hold on for several hundred more epochs. However, after absorbing so much power of heaven and earth, hysteria became more and more powerful. In fact, it became so powerful that even the people in that aging dimension couldn't control it anymore. And thus, that aging dimension also became a sacrifice to hysteria. It was engulfed by its own creation. Hysteria started to engulf dimensions with no bounds, continually strengthening itself. In the end, it also transformed into a dimension itself, the most powerful dimension. According to the rules of the Genesis world, it's located at the very front. It continued to engulf dimensions. However, behind it were 4 powerful transcendent dimensions that contained countless elites, greatly slowing it down. However, after countless epochs, 3 of the transcendent dimensions have already been engulfed by hysteria. The supreme elites from these dimensions have all retreated to the final remaining transcendent dimension. Together with the elites from this dimension, they're now resisting the invasion of hysteria. Even so, we're still on the back foot. If this continues, there'll eventually come a day when the final transcendent dimension also falls. At that time, the entire Genesis world will be engulfed by hysteria, forever descending into darkness and primal chaos. As things stand now, the Genesis world has also been forced to launch a defensive mechanism, activating the realm wars. This is an attempt to create more transcendent dimensions. Everyone was transfixed with shock. This was the truth behind the realm wars. The aim of the realm wars was actually this lofty and supreme. It was in order to fight back against the destruction of the entire Genesis world. Ling Han was still confused, and he asked, "Why do we need to create more transcendent dimensions?" Zhou Heng smiled, and replied, "Because the higher one's cultivation, the more they require a higher-level dimension to unleash their full power. Take me, for example. If I release my full cultivation, the response from heaven and earth will be immense. If it isn't heaven and earth that suppresses me, it will be me who destroys heaven and earth." Chapter 2395. 6th Tier Heavenly Venerate. Heaven and earth couldn't tolerate heavenly venerates. After so long, why could the foreign realm still not defeat the celestial realm? This was because the heaven and earth of the celestial realm was the most powerful weapon. Otherwise, the elites from the foreign realm would have charged over long ago. Thus, once the final transcendent dimension was engulfed by hysteria, the supreme elites from that dimension would have no other place to settle. At that time, how could they fight against hysteria? Right now, even the Genesis world had been forced to link the dimensions together. It had activated the realm wars, and was attempting to create more transcendent dimensions. It was abundantly clear just how terrifying hysteria was. The Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate remained silent. The aim of her, the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable, and the Zhou Heavenly Venerate was simply to become transcendent beings, beings who were free from the restrictions of this heaven and earth. They wanted the freedom to travel through the dimensions without any restrictions. However, after listening to Zhou Heng, fuck! Were they genuinely transcendent? Once hysteria charged over, all of the dimensions would be destroyed. The transcendence of heavenly venerates simply allowed them to break free from the restrictions of their dimension. They could reside in any dimension without worrying about their strength being weakened. However, if the dimensions all disappeared, heavenly venerates would also be rendered useless. That being the case, what transcendence would they enjoy? Ling Han's expression was solemn. He hadn't imagined that the situation was so grave. In comparison, the invasion by the foreign realm truly seemed insignificant. "Lord, so you've come over to nurture more elites to fight against hysteria?" Ling Han asked. Zhou Heng nodded, and said, "Right now, we've stopped hysteria outside the final transcendent dimension. However, our casualty numbers are too great, so we need more fresh reinforcements. As such, I'm traveling through the dimensions in search of prodigies to bring back to the transcendent dimension to nurture." He paused for a moment before continuing, "I won't force anyone, but I still hope that those who are prodigious will follow me to the front lines. Otherwise, once the transcendent dimension falls to hysteria, everything will transform into void." Boom! Right at this moment, a colossal tentacle suddenly materialized in the air, slamming down at the green flames Heavenly Venerate and the others. This tentacle was pitch black, and it was covered in numerous indescribable symbols. Its appearance instantly triggered wails of grief from heaven and earth. A corner of heaven and earth was forcefully torn apart, leading to an endless deluge of bloody rain. It was as if heaven and earth were about to collapse. "Damn it!" Zhou Heng's expression changed drastically. He reached out with his right hand, and a sword had already appeared in his hand at some time. With a single slash, heaven and earth were shaken. The green flames Heavenly Venerate also gave a shout as she pushed her palms out, summoning a wave of boundless flames. Pang! The tentacle slammed down, and the green flames Heavenly Venerate was ruthlessly sent flying. Meanwhile, Zhou Heng barely managed to dash over in time, swinging his sword and slashing at the tentacle. Pooh! The sword hacked into the tentacle, yet no blood sprayed into the air. Instead, the tentacle shuddered lightly before transforming into bubbles and vanishing without a trace. This is a spiritual mark of hysteria. It most likely discovered the dimension coordinates of this place as well, so it followed me here. Fortunately, this dimension beacon has already been destroyed. Hysteria can't come here again. Zhou Heng sheathed his sword as he spoke. He then looked toward the green flames Heavenly Venerate. The green flames Heavenly Venerate was in an extremely miserable state. After facing an attack head-on, her chest had directly caved in. She picked herself up with great difficulty. Boom! Flames enveloped her, and her wounds started to slowly heal. A cold chill gripped the hearts of Ling Han and the others. The green flames Heavenly Venerate had actually been severely wounded in a single strike. One had to realize that the tentacle had only been a spiritual mark of hysteria. Just how great was the gulf between their respective power? Ling Han then looked at Zhou Heng. This person was most likely even more powerful than Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. Otherwise, he couldn't have exterminated hysteria's spiritual mark. Zhou Heng smiled at Ling Han, and said, "The Heavenly Venerable tier is divided into 7 minor tiers. I'm a 6th tier Heavenly Venerate." Fuck! Ling Han and the others were rendered speechless. No wonder this person was so powerful. He was actually a 6th tier Heavenly Venerate. One had to realize that Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was only at the peak stage of the 1st tier. Yet he could already rival the team of Zhou Heavenly Venerate and the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable. That being the case, just how powerful was a 6th tier Heavenly Venerate? Then what about hysteria? Ling Han asked in curiosity. Hysteria reached the peak stage of the 7th tier long ago. Now it's transformed into a dimension itself, so it's already pointless to measure its power in terms of the Heavenly Venerable tier. Zhou Heng pondered for a moment before replying. In other words, it was even more powerful than 7th tier Heavenly Venerates. This was quite understandable. Otherwise, it couldn't have destroyed 3 transcendent dimensions. The green flames Heavenly Venerate's wounds still had yet to fully recover. However, she turned around and said, "I've decided. I'm going to follow you to the transcendent dimension." In this dimension, she had almost reached the peak of her potential already. It was almost impossible to take another step forward. Of course, this was unless the celestial realm crumbled and she absorbed the essence power of heaven and earth. Only so could she possibly advance to the 2nd tier and realize transcendence. However, this was only a possibility. Moreover, hysteria was so petrifying, so it was hard to say whether she could ever see this day. Finally, the transcendent dimension could nurture 7th tier Heavenly Venerates, so she would naturally have a better environment to develop if she went there. Zhou Heng nodded in delight, saying, "I can sense 3 other Heavenly Venerates in this dimension. These are all potential allies to recruit. Also, young people like this are our hope for the future. I can only come once, so I need to take everyone who wants to go together." The transcendent dimension definitely had something like a dimension beacon that could guide him back. "Let's go together." Zhou Heng reached forward, and drew Ling Han and the others into his sleeve. Of course, he didn't draw the green flame's heavenly Venerate into his sleeve. Even though she was weaker than him, she was still a heavenly Venerate, after all. Those who could reach this cultivation were all paramount prodigies. With a slash of his sword, Heng sliced apart the void. He immediately stepped in. After hesitating for a brief moment, the green flame's heavenly Venerate also stepped in after him. Heavenly Venerates were far too powerful. A split second after stepping into the void, Heng had already stepped out. They arrived before a tall mountain. There was a palace atop this mountain, and with their powerful vision, they could all clearly see the words Sealed Emotion Palace. It exuded an aura of undying eternity. Heng shook his sleeve, and everyone landed on the ground. He shook his sleeves again, and his aura as a heavenly Venerate also vanished. This was to avoid being targeted by heaven and earth. As a 6th-tier heavenly Venerate, if he unleashed his full power, the only fate of the celestial realm would be destruction. The green flame's heavenly Venerate also arrived. Upon seeing Heng suppress his aura, she was also too embarrassed to show off her own cultivation. After all, even a 6th-tier heavenly Venerate was being so modest. She suppressed her aura, yet she was nowhere near as able as Heng. She could only maintain this suppression for a short amount of time before being targeted by heaven and earth again. They headed toward the mountain peak. Someone leaped over and roared, "Impudence!" This person blocked their path. This was a youth at the ascending origin tier. He clearly didn't recognize the green flame's heavenly Venerate, and he more so couldn't recognize Heng. However, he was extremely familiar with Ling Han. He immediately yelped, "Ling Han!" He was extremely astonished. A measly ascending origin tier elite actually dared to barge into the residence of a heavenly Venerate? Had he eaten the courage of a dragon? However, Ling Han had someone backing him, so he was naturally brimming with confidence. "I'm accompanying 2 seniors over, so please help me request a meeting with the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable." The young man exploded with rage. Ling Han actually dared to speak so wantonly. This was a heavenly Venerate. Was this someone who could be called over on a whim? Also, what did he mean accompanying 2 seniors? He didn't recognize either of them. At the most, they were only at the Celestial King tier. Yet, they wanted an audience with the heavenly Venerate? Were they dreaming? Very well. You actually dare to barge into the Sealed Emotion Palace. Don't even think about leaving in one piece, he said in a menacing voice. Ling Han chuckled in his mind. He had naturally laid a trap for this person. Otherwise, he could have directly announced the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate's title. Heng glanced at him, and a faint smile surprisingly tugged at his lips. He showed no signs of wanting to chide Ling Han. Ling Han knew that this person had most likely been playful in his youth as well. Thus, he allowed him to cause a ruckus here. Chapter 2396. Sealed Emotion Palace. The youth from the Sealed Emotion Palace unleashed a long bellow, and 2 powerful elites quickly rushed over to meet them. Colorful light hovered around their bodies. They were celestial kings. One was at the 3rd heaven, while the other was at the 5th heaven. They were fairly powerful beings. The 2 celestial kings first looked Ling Han and the others up and down. They were naturally searching for heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. He was far too terrifying, and he had truly made a fearsome name for himself in that battle. He wasn't here. The 2 celestial kings breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he wasn't here, everything would be fine. The 3rd heaven celestial king flashed a menacing smile as he looked at Ling Han, saying, "Ling Han, just because heavenly Venerate Wu Lu made an announcement, you think you can act as you please? You actually dare to barge into the Sealed Emotion Palace? You're seeking death." Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to disobey the command of a heavenly Venerate. However, Ling Han had actually barged into the Sealed Emotion Palace by himself. If they didn't kill him, wouldn't that be a blight on the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable's name? This was their bottom line, one that couldn't be crossed. Ling Han smiled and said, "I'm accompanying 2 lords over. They have something important to discuss with the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable. Aren't you going to hurry up and report this matter?" Impudence! The 3rd heaven celestial king roared in anger. He reached over to grab Ling Han. He didn't dare to kill Ling Han, but he didn't mind capturing this brat and handing him over to the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable to deal with. Why don't we all calm down? There's no need for violence, is there? Heng said with a faint smile. He reached over and lightly grabbed the third Heaven Celestial King's wrist. The third Heaven Celestial King faltered for a brief moment. An expression of disbelief then spread across his face. He hadn't noticed this person's movement at all. Gasp. Just how great was the gulf in power between them? The fifth Heaven Celestial King was also astounded. Heng hadn't exuded any aura of dominance at all. Yet, his movement was actually so astonishing and powerful. He was unable to believe this. He was unable to fathom this. This kind of power was even superior to his. He hurriedly sent a signal to call for even more powerful reinforcements. Coincidentally, the most powerful member of the sealed emotion lineage was present today. The Imperial Void Celestial King. In no time, a terrifying aura surged over, bringing with it a paramount elite. This was the Imperial Void Celestial King, essentially the most powerful person under the level of Heavenly Venerate. Ling Han, the Imperial Void Celestial King exclaimed, his pupils contracting. This measly ascending origin tier elite had even caused headaches to a mighty Heavenly Venerate. Ling Han was definitely one of a kind, and also the first of his kind. Moreover, he had also failed to obtain the origin magic cube from Ling Han at that time. This was something that continued to linger on his mind, troubling him greatly. To be remembered by so many Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings and even Heavenly Venerates. Ling Han was definitely one of a kind. The Imperial Void Celestial King was just about to unleash his might, yet he instantly faltered when he swept his gaze across the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate. Others might not recognize the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate, but that was because they didn't have the right to recognize her. However, as the most outstanding disciple of the sealed emotion lineage, how could he not recognize this paramount elite? He hurriedly bowed with respect and said, "My respects to Lord Green Flames." Pooh! The two celestial kings instantly choked and spluttered upon hearing this. What? That young girl is actually the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate. What in the world is going on? Isn't the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate allied with the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable and the Zhou Heavenly Venerate? Why is she now standing with Ling Han? It was naturally beneath the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate to explain herself. In fact, she even ignored the Imperial Void Celestial King. In any case, it was Zhou Heng's words that counted. The hearts of the Imperial Void Celestial King and the others jolted upon seeing the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate's attitude. Perhaps she had defected to the side of Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. One had to realize that the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable and the Zhou Heavenly Venerate had to team up if they wanted to rival Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. That being the case, the choice of the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate would decide the victor. Whichever side she supported was whichever side would gain the upper hand. The two celestial kings hurriedly kneeled down and said, "Our respects to Lord Green Flames." They weren't as powerful and domineering as the Imperial Void Celestial King, so they naturally didn't dare to only bow. They fell to their knees and paid grand respects. The youth was also scared out of his skin. He had actually dared to shout at a Heavenly Venerate. Had he grown tired of living? He prostrated himself, offering his most sincere apology to the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate. The Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate finally spoke, saying, "Sealed emotion, get over here." "Haha, why didn't you warn me about your visit, Green Flames? That way, I could have prepared some tea and snacks to welcome you." There was a long laugh as the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable appeared. His appearance was handsome, yet his expression was cold and emotionless. The Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate humphed, pointing at Zhou Heng and saying, "It's him who wants to talk to you, not me." The sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable was astonished. Judging from her tone, the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate was seemingly filled with apprehension toward this man. However, one had to realize that there had only been 3 Heavenly Venerates in the celestial realm. Now there were 4. However, there was no 5th person. What did a Heavenly Venerate need to be afraid of? He trained his gaze on Zhou Heng. There was confusion in his eyes because he truly couldn't see anything special about Zhou Heng. He was as ordinary as could be. The Imperial Void Celestial King stepped forward and said, "Friend, who are you? If there's anything you want to discuss, you can discuss it with me." If he allowed a celestial king to directly converse with the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable, wouldn't that be devaluing the Heavenly Venerate's face? Thus, as his disciple, he had to step forward. Ling Han also stepped forward. If a celestial king didn't have the right to converse with a Heavenly Venerate, then the Imperial Void Celestial King more so didn't have a right to converse with Zhou Heng, no. Ling Han smiled and said, Imperial Void, how can you show such disrespect before Senior Zhou? The Imperial Void Celestial King was incensed. A measly ascending origin tier cultivator actually dared to utter his name without honorifics? To say nothing of Ling Han, most celestial kings would have to respectfully refer to him as Lord Imperial Void when they saw him. There were 9 heavens in the celestial king tier, and each step forward was as difficult as ascending the heavens. This was not a mere joke. I'll teach you a lesson on the behalf of Lord Wu Lu, the Imperial Void Celestial King said. He reached over to grab at Ling Han. He had to punish this brat no matter what. Zhou Heng smiled faintly. His eyes widened slightly, and a burst of sword intent burst forth, carrying with it a paramount aura. Heaven and earth instantly replied, with thunder rumbling and a tribulation forming to erase his existence. The color drained from the face of the Imperial Void Celestial King. This was definitely the might of a Heavenly Venerate. Fuck. Since when did a 5th Heavenly Venerate appear in the celestial realm? Holy fuck. Perhaps Ling Han is the representative of Heavenly Venerates? Whenever he appears, he's always bringing a Heavenly Venerate with him. Friend, please calm down, the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable hurriedly said. He reached over to block Zhou Heng's attack. Pang! The 2 mighty Heavenly Venerates exchanged a strike. Zhou Heng smiled faintly, and quickly suppressed his aura as a Heavenly Venerate. He became indiscernible from an ordinary person. Meanwhile, the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable stumbled back in retreat. With each step that he retreated, heaven and earth would groan as if it were about to crumble, unable to endure this force. The Imperial Void Celestial King and the others were stunned upon seeing this. They all trembled in fear. The sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable had actually been defeated. He hadn't merely suffered a small disadvantage. Rather, he was completely inferior to this person. The gulf between them was far too great. Gasp. Not long ago, there was Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. Now there was also this person. Were they trying to defy the heavens? The sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable's expression also changed drastically. He calmed himself down and asked, Friend, you are? I'm Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng replied in modesty. However, being overly modest was sometimes an act of arrogance. This was especially the case since he had already revealed his devastating power. Friend Zhou is a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate, the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate finally said. However, her words almost frightened everyone to death. 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate. This kind of elite would be invincible even if they went to the foreign realm. In fact, they could even destroy the entire foreign realm if they wanted. They were genuinely paramount and transcendent beings. The sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable was both stunned and confused. How could such a being be born in the celestial realm? This super low-level dimension couldn't sustain such a being at all. Chapter 2397. Dimension Scroll. Even the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable was shocked for a long while before regaining his composure. He bowed again and said, My respects to friend Zhou. This was a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate, an indescribably powerful being. However, Zhou Heng maintained his innocent expression and a faint smile, and he said, I have something to discuss with everyone. Please come inside, the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable said with a smile. He was extremely calm at this moment. If Zhou Heng wanted to target him, he naturally wouldn't need to go to so much trouble. After all, a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate was far too powerful. Zhou Heng nodded, and they all entered the sealed emotion palace. I'll invite the 2 others over as well, Zhou Heng said. With a shake, 2 projections walked out from his body. Their appearance was identical to his. The 2 projections tore open the void and left. After a short moment, both the Zhou Heavenly Venerate and Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu tore open the void, and arrived at almost the exact same time. Moreover, they both wore expressions of astonishment. This was only natural. After all, Who wouldn't feel numb with shock after seeing a 6th-tier heavenly Venerate for the first time? Zhou Heng was clearly someone who didn't like to speak nonsense. He got straight to the point, and his words both shocked and delighted the 3 heavenly Venerates. They were shocked because their dream of transcendence was nothing more than Theta dream. Perhaps they could realize this dream, but it would quickly crumble into nothingness. After all, a monster such as hysteria actually existed. At the same time, they were delighted because they would have the chance to advance to the 2nd tier, 3rd tier, or even 6th tier or 7th tier after entering the transcendent dimension. Being able to become a heavenly Venerate, which of them wasn't a profoundly talented prodigy? Which of them was weaker than the other? After Zhou Heng finished his explanation, not only were the heavenly Venerates tempted, but even the Imperial Void Celestial King and the others were tempted. After all, they all yearned to enter a higher level dimension. This would greatly aid their growth. Announce this to the world. The 5 heavenly Venerates quickly reached a consensus. They would announce this to the world, and pick the most prodigious talents to head over to the transcendent dimension. The heavenly Venerates naturally didn't need to attend to these trivial matters by themselves. They delegated these tasks to their disciples and grand disciples. The news spread, and the entire celestial realm went into uproar. Of course, the 5 heavenly Venerates didn't reveal the existence of hysteria. Instead, they first revealed the existence of the realm wars. They then claimed that they were bringing prodigies to a high-level dimension where they would be able to increase their development potential. Countless prodigies surfaced, all gathering toward the meeting locations that had been set up by the various celestial kings. Those who were outstanding could further go to the places of enlightenment of the 4 heavenly Venerates. There, Zhou Heng would decide whether to take them or not. Ling Han, Ji Wuming, Shi, and the others were all called over by Zhou Heng. This heavenly Venerate had extremely high hopes for them, and there were some words that he wanted to say to them. Even though you can also ascend to the Celestial King tier in the Transcendent Dimension, I hope that you can ascend to the Celestial King tier here before heading over, Zhou Heng said in a serious voice. Only by becoming a Celestial King will you have the right to interact with the essence of regulations. This is the foundation for you to comprehend the power of heaven and earth. Whichever dimension you're born in is whichever dimension the regulations will be easiest to grasp for you. This is your foundation. Zhou Heng paused for a moment before continuing. The celestial path in this dimension is going to open in 30,000 years, so I'll give you 40,000 years. At that time, regardless of whether you've become a celestial king or not, I'll take you to the transcendent dimension. Thank you, Lord. Ling Han and the others said. It was extremely rare to come across such an understanding heavenly Venerate. Something suddenly occurred to Ling Han, and he immediately retrieved the unopenable scroll, asking, Lord, can I please ask you something? What's this? Wally had only said that this scroll possessed some essence power of the Genesis world. However, he hadn't explained the actual use of this scroll. A strange sight appeared. Before, Ling Han couldn't open this scroll no matter what. Now, however, it radiated with iridescent colors as it automatically unfurled by itself. Moreover, it even broke free from Ling Han's grasp, hovering over to Ji Wuming. It swayed slightly, and it was as if it wanted him to grab it. Zhou Heng smiled and said, This is a dimension scroll that only certain people can open. Whoever obtains it can immediately become a heavenly Venerate. What? Ji Wuming and the others were all astonished and tempted upon hearing this. They hadn't even become celestial kings, yet they now had an opportunity to directly ascend the heavens? If they obtained this scroll, they could directly become a heavenly Venerate. They found this extremely difficult to believe. How could such a heaven-defying item exist? Moreover, heaven and earth didn't tolerate heavenly Venerates, so why would heaven and earth try to conflict with itself? However, Ling Han believed these words. This was because this scroll contained the foundation of the Genesis world void particle energy. It is in order to protect itself that heaven and earth has birthed such dimension scrolls, Zhou Heng said with a sigh of emotion. However, such power is bestowed by heaven and earth, so heaven and earth can naturally bestow it or take it back as it pleases. Moreover, if one becomes a heavenly Venerate through the dimension scroll, their potential will be forever limited to the first tier. Ling Han came to a realization. No wonder the foreign realm had such scrolls as well. As it turned out, this was a self-protection mechanism of heaven and earth. It wanted to create more powerful elites. However, Heaven and Earth also didn't want to lose control over these powerful elites lest they affected the equilibrium of Heaven and Earth, so it possessed the ability to confiscate this power as well. Moreover, if one became a heavenly Venerate through the Dimension Scroll, their potential would be forever limited to the first tier. They would be unable to transcend. Cold sweat involuntarily formed on Ling Han's back. Fortunately, he hadn't been the person favored by Heaven and Earth. Otherwise, if he had rashly opened the scroll, indeed, ascending the heavens in a single step would have been euphoric. However, he would have only been a paramount being in the celestial realm. He would have been unable to participate in the grand battle of the Genesis world. However, Heaven and Earth had actually chosen Ji Wuming and not him. Ling Han was slightly displeased about this. Did Heaven and Earth believe that Ji Wuming was a more suitable representative than him? Ji Wuming shut his eyes, his hands trembling slightly. He could ascend the heavens in a single step. How could he not waver? However, after a short moment, he immediately steeled his resolve. He opened his eyes, and they were once again clear. He shook his head, rejecting the offer from Heaven and Earth. Heng reached over and suppressed the Dimension Scroll. He was powerful enough to even obliterate the celestial realm, so suppressing this Dimension Scroll was naturally as easy as could be. He then tossed the scroll back to Ling Han. Turning around to glance at Ji Wuming, there was an expression of appreciation on his face. Such kind of resolve was extremely rare. One had to realize that he had rejected the opportunity to become a heavenly Venerate in a single step. This resolve was highly regarded by Zhou Heng. Meanwhile, Xueqi and the other monarch stars were all extremely envious. They could indeed become ninth heaven celestial kings. However, becoming a heavenly Venerate was truly far too difficult. Just how many monarch stars had existed in history? However, how many of them had become heavenly Venerates? In the past dozen or so epochs, only the karmic life heavenly venerable had succeeded. However, Ji Wuming had actually rejected this opportunity. They both admired him and felt jealous of him. Just how wonderful would it have been if the heavens had favored them instead? Lord Zhou, I have another question I want to ask, Ling Han said. He explained the situation of the karmic life heavenly venerable before asking, "Dare I ask, Lord, is there any way to revive the karmic life heavenly venerable?" Zhou Heng was a 6th tier heavenly Venerate, and he was perhaps even more powerful than the celestial realm dimension. Perhaps he would know a way to extract the karmic life heavenly venerable's divine sense, allowing him to reincarnate and recultivate. However, Zhou Heng shook his head and said, he fused himself with the heavenly Tao, and this is an irreversible process. To say nothing of me, even my master can't do anything about this. Everyone became even more curious. Zhou Heng was already a 6th tier heavenly Venerate, yet judging from his words, his master was clearly even more powerful. Perhaps he was a 7th tier heavenly Venerate. Lord Zhou, is your esteemed master a 7th tier heavenly Venerate? What's his title? Xueqi, Jialan, and the others all transformed into inquisitive children as they asked these questions. My master is indeed a 7th tier heavenly Venerate. His name is Lin Luo, Zhou Heng replied with a smile. He didn't conceal this from them. Lin Luo, 7th tier heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2398. Returning to the Alchemy City. 7th tier heavenly Venerate. Lin Luo. Admiration welled up in everyone's mind. A 1st tier heavenly Venerate was already powerful enough to trigger jealousy and intolerance from Heaven and Earth. That being the case, just how powerful was a 7th tier heavenly Venerate? In any case, once they arrived in the transcendent dimension, they would be able to meet this elite. 30,000 years. In this short span of time, they needed to reach the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, ascend the celestial path, nurture a celestial seed, and become a celestial king. This was extremely difficult, especially since advancing each stage in the ascending origin tier would take an exorbitant amount of time. However, they only had a measly 30,000 years. Even taking into account the acceleration of time, this would still be incredibly difficult. However, what if they advanced to the celestial king tier in the transcendent dimension? There was nothing wrong with this, but it would definitely affect their future growth. Because they had been born and nurtured here, the essence regulations of this dimension were their root. Why was Zhou Heng giving them 40,000 years? Was it not to give them time to temper their foundations after becoming a celestial king? Ling Han, the Empress, and Hu Niu all had the right to go to the transcendent dimension. However, even though Zhou Heng permitted Ling Han to bring some friends and family, the number of people definitely couldn't be too great. Even though he was a 6th-tier heavenly Venerate, he still couldn't bring too many people with him when traversing through dimensions. If this person wanted to bring family and that person wanted to bring friends, wouldn't they end up taking half of the celestial realm over? Thus, there was a strict limit on how many people each person could bring. Ling Han performed some calculations. Even with the quota of the Empress and Hu Niu, it still wasn't enough. He would also need to use the quota of Wali if he wanted to bring all of his lovers and wives with him. When traversing through dimensions, spatial god tools would be useless. The devastating pressure of dimensions would crush all matter. In fact, even 2nd-tier heavenly Venerate would be crushed to death by this petrifying power. Then what about his son, brothers, and friends? In fact, there was another way to travel through dimensions. That was through the connection points between the realms. Even though it was extremely time-consuming, it was, after all, another possible method. However, this would require one to be powerful enough. Even 1st-tier heavenly Venerates wouldn't be able to utilize this method. Only transcendent 2nd-tier heavenly Venerates who didn't need to rely on their dimension could achieve this. Moreover, it wasn't just time-consuming in the sense of billions of years. Rather, it was time-consuming in the sense of epochs upon epochs. Zhou Heng was a 6th-tier heavenly Venerate, a top-tier elite even in the transcendent dimension. He was an irreplaceable part of their battle prowess. Thus, how could he be missing from the front lines for several epochs? In the next few days, Zhou Heng generously taught them all that he could, explaining to them the true meaning of the Great Tao. They had come from different dimensions with different regulations, so Zhou Heng naturally couldn't teach them about the regulations of the celestial realm. However, he could provide them with guidance on even more high-level notions. After all, he was a 6th-tier heavenly Venerate. As someone even more powerful than most dimensions, would he not be knowledgeable enough to act as their teacher? While earnestly cultivating source power, Ling Han also divided some of his attention to practicing alchemy. He was only a single step away from reaching the 10th refinement. Right now, he had several 10th refinement alchemical pills, and even 3 celestial king-tier alchemical pills to use as reference. This was a humongous help. Ling Han accelerated the flow of time. If he pushed it to the limit, he could transform 30,000 years of real time into at least 30 million years. After 12 years, Ling Han had already experienced a lengthy 10,000 years. He finally made a significant breakthrough in alchemy, achieving the 10th refinement for the first time. Rumble! Thunder immediately boomed across the sky, with dark clouds gathering to form a tribulation. Its target was none other than the alchemical pill in Ling Han's hand. This newly concocted 10th refinement alchemical pill had actually triggered heavenly tribulation. However, alchemical pills were clearly different from cultivators. The tribulation dissipated after just a single bolt of lightning. The alchemical pill endured the tribulation, yet a corner of it still cracked. A quarter of it went missing. 10th refinement alchemical pills can trigger heavenly tribulation, so what about celestial king-tier alchemical pills? Ling Han murmured to himself. Since he had successfully achieved the 10th refinement, this signified that he had the right to refine celestial king-tier alchemical pills now. However, celestial king-tier great herbs were far too precious. Even as wealthy as he was, he only had a measly few such great herbs. It was nowhere near enough to experiment with. Ling Han was in no hurry to concoct 5-star alchemical pills. He still had yet to become a celestial king, so 5-star alchemical pills would be completely useless to him. Right now, he simply needed to practice his spirit refinement ability. Once he thoroughly stabilized his ability to perform the 10th refinement, becoming a 5-star alchemist would naturally follow. Ling Han decided to follow his original plan. He would return to the Eastern Celestial Realm first. He set off with his wives, and he even brought his parents with him this time. This was because he needed to reunite his mother with her brother. They arrived at the coast, and they prepared to cross the boundless seas. Even though Ling Han had already reached the ascending origin tier, crossing the boundless seas would still be fairly dangerous. After all, these seas were home to numerous celestial king-tier beasts, some of which had existed since primordial times. Right now, Ling Han could no longer rely on the Black Tower. Without his biggest trump card, he naturally had to make more preparations. Fortunately, since he had returned to the celestial realm, he could now use the heaven and earth origin stars that he had obtained. These were tools that could unleash the destructive power of celestial kings. They were naturally mighty and threatening weapons. In any case, ascending origin tier elites already possessed the ability to cross the boundless seas. As long as one was familiar with the sea routes, avoided the territories of celestial king tier beasts, and didn't suffer the misfortune of coming across colossal waves, crossing the seas wouldn't be too dangerous. Even so, Ling Han and the others still sought out a fleet. Even though many of them were already at the ascending origin tier, none of them was familiar with the sea routes. Thus, they still had to rely on professionals. They bought themselves some tickets and boarded a ship. They set off for the eastern celestial realm. They stood at the bow of the ship and enjoyed the sea breeze. They took in the scenery and enjoyed this rare moment of peace. Of course, there were naturally foolish people on the ship. Upon seeing so many beautiful women in Ling Han's group, they wanted to walk over to flirt and strike up a conversation. However, they were naturally ignored by the women. Some of them were smart enough to leave, but there were also some who believed themselves to be powerful enough, and they even attempted to use force and violence. When encountering these people, the solution was simple. They were directly tossed overboard. Ling Han and the others were far too powerful, so the ship's crew didn't dare to do anything about them. In any case, they hadn't fulfilled their responsibilities, either. If they had maintained law and order on the ship, no one would have gone over to harass Ling Han's women. They were quite fortunate this time, and they didn't encounter any rough weather. Moreover, the experienced captain navigated them around all of the dangerous regions. After several decades, the large ship finally docked at the eastern celestial realm. Ling Han and the others disembarked and set off for Alchemy City. After reaching land, their speed increased immensely. Moreover, the eastern celestial realm was far smaller than the western celestial realm, although it didn't have any transfer formations that spanned across regions. Thus, it took them more than half a year to arrive at their destination. In fact, this was mainly thanks to Ling Han's mastery of the regulations of space. Otherwise, this trip would have taken them at least dozens or even hundreds of years. "I've finally returned," Ling Han said with emotion as he stood before Alchemy City. Hunyo grabbed Ling Han's hand and said, "Let's go." She marched toward the gates. Upon seeing Ling Han, the city guards faltered for a moment before exclaiming in excitement, "Chairperson!" Ling Han nodded in acknowledgement. Before leaving Alchemy City, he had already accepted the position of chairperson of Alchemy City. However, Grandmaster Zhou would be responsible for dealing with all of the ordinary matters. He entered the city, and it wasn't long before news of his return spread far and wide. Countless people instantly rushed over to welcome him. Ling Han naturally paid no heed to those who were trying to cotton up to him. Instead, he directly headed to the 5th level to visit Grandmaster Zhou. "Disciple, you've returned? How much money have you made?" Grandmaster Zhou asked. His first question upon seeing Ling Han revealed his nature as a hoarder of wealth. Chapter 2399. You can already do 8th Refinement. This was very much Grandmaster Zhou's style. It seemed like the only thing in his eyes was profit. As for any honor of alchemy, how could that possibly be more important than earning a few starstones in his eyes? Ling Han nodded with a smile. "I've earned a lot." Though he did not have much time to concoct alchemical pills for profit, he did have an alchemy pharmacy, and also had Lu Jun working for him, so he actually had earned a considerable amount. Of course, compared to the accomplishment of him robbing over 100 ancestral kings, it was really far, far too little. Grandmaster Zhou laughed loudly, and only then expressed his concern over Ling Han's skill in alchemy. "Brat, are you at 6th Refinement yet?" Ling Han nodded. "I reached 6th Refinement long ago." "Then when can you do 7th Refinement?" Grandmaster Zhou asked further, his expression completely natural. That was because Ling Han's natural talent at alchemy was really too high. He had to have advanced into the 6th Refinement in the tens of thousands of years, but that might not be for 7th Refinement. Ling Han cracked a grin. "I can already do 7th Refinement." Only now did Grandmaster Zhicheng really get a shock.
Brat, not bad.
Seventh refinement was his equal.
This little disciple of his was indeed extraordinary to manage to catch up to him in such a short period of time.
If so, surpassing him would only be a matter of time. He did not feel the slightest jealousy.
The stronger the disciple, and the faster he advanced, the more pleased he would naturally be as the master.
Then, when do you expect that you would be able to attain 8th refinement? Grandmaster Zhicheng was filled with anticipation. Ling Han was slightly sheepish. The expectations this master had for him seemed to be a little low. If he said he could already do 10th refinement, would it shock the old man to death? But he could not deceive his master, which made him hesitate slightly. Brat, don't feel embarrassed. The stage of 8th refinement is indeed hard to breach. Just look at me. See how many hundreds of millions of years I have been stuck on this level? Grandmaster Zhicheng thought that Ling Han breaking through to the 8th refinement was far in the indefinite future. Though he felt slightly disappointed, he still comforted Ling Han. Niu couldn't help but say, "Old man, Niu's Ling Han has already reached the 8th refinement long ago." The damn old geezer actually dared to look down on Ling Han. Cough. Grandmaster Zhicheng was shocked, and hurriedly confirmed with Ling Han. Really? Only then did Ling Han smile and answer, "Indeed, I can do 8th refinement." Fuck. Even Grandmaster Zhicheng couldn't help but be moved. Before Ling Han had broken through to 8th refinement, he very much hoped that his disciple could advance to this stage. But when Ling Han had truly attained 8th refinement, he was slightly dejected. He had not expected that his disciple would surpass him so quickly. "Come show me," he said. Ling Han nodded. Actually, Grandmaster Zhicheng's natural talent in alchemy was also very strong, and the reason why he had not advanced into 8th refinement was because, firstly, 8th refinement was indeed difficult, and secondly, the old man had no one to lead the way in front of him. If Grandmaster Zhicheng could see the process of 8th refinement a few more times, he would definitely be able to take this step. Thus, Ling Han took out a 4-star alchemical pill, and began to perform spirit refinement. Now, before the 10th refinement, he practically could ensure a 100% success rate in spirit refinement. Thus, when it was similarly 8th refinement or 9th refinement, he naturally had no wish to waste it on low-grade alchemical pills. 1st refinement. 2nd refinement. 7th refinement. After reaching 7th refinement, Ling Han paused slightly, and then began 8th refinement. Grandmaster Zhicheng's expression involuntarily became solemn. 8th refinement was a step that he had never managed to take, and he was even more nervous than Ling Han as an observer, his hands involuntarily clenching into tight fists. But Ling Han's movements were smooth and unhurried. There was not the slightest pause. It was as if spirit refinement was something as simple and easily done as just sweeping the floor in his hands. Very quickly, he was finished, and the 8th golden-veined pattern appeared on the alchemical pill. 8th refinement. Grandmaster Zhicheng felt his heart throbbing wildly, but after a while, he broke into a smile, which soon turned into loud laughter that seemed capable of shaking the heavens. "Good disciple. Good disciple. Good disciple," he hurriedly said, almost breaking out into tears. The accomplishments of the disciple had surpassed the master, which made him feel both excited and exhilarated. Of course, he also felt slightly rueful. The rear wave had completely pushed down the front wave. The women exchanged a smile, and the Empress said, "Old geezer, husband's standard is not just limited to 8th refinement." When these words fell, even Grandmaster Zhicheng couldn't help but tremble. What? The 8th refinement was still not the end. It can't be that you've reached 9th refinement, brat? Grandmaster Zhicheng had really gotten a scare. He could still imagine 8th refinement because he himself was actually not too far from the stage as well, but 9th refinement was a threshold that he had really never come into contact with. It was a stage that was filled with mystery for him. "Brat, you're not going to tell me that you can do the 9th refinement too, right?" he asked. At first, Ling Han had not planned to tell the old man the truth so quickly, fearing that he could not take it. This would be a little too stimulating. But since the old man had asked, he could only nod. "I can." Instantly, Grandmaster Zhicheng was speechless and gaping, dumbstruck. 9th refinement was too fantastical. "Show me," the old man said in a shaking voice. Ling Han began. For him, Ninth Refinement was only slightly difficult. He still managed to finish very quickly. The ninth golden veined pattern, Ninth Refinement. Grandmaster Zhou practically snatched this alchemical pill over.
Holding it in his hand, his eyes were closed, with him revealing an expression of great enjoyment.
From today onwards, this alchemical pill is the most prized treasure of Alchemy City, the old man declared. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh.
Master, you cannot be greedy with your disciple.
Grandmaster Zhou naturally knew that Ling Han was just joking, but his hand was gripped tightly, as if he feared that Ling Han would snatch the pill from him. He was acting very childishly. The women all pouted. Merely Ninth Refinement, and it was the prized treasure of the city? Their man could still do the 10th Refinement. Bewitching Maiden Ro opened her mouth. Ling Han Wu. She had just barely opened her mouth when Ling Han had stopped her with a hand on her mouth. The old man was already shocked enough. If he knew that Ling Han could now do the 10th Refinement, he might really go mad. Grandmaster Zhou was distracted.
He would keep this divine pill in his collection from now onwards, and only the most outstandingly talented disciples would be able to study it so they could increase their comprehension of alchemy.
Go on, go on. He waved a hand, as he stowed the alchemical pill carefully. Ling Han and the others were all smiling. The old man really still had a bit of childish innocence. They settled down first. It was rare for them to return, so they naturally could not just leave immediately. Now that the chairperson had returned, everyone in Alchemy City naturally rejoiced. Grandmaster Zhou took care of arranging a grand feast, inviting the various forces of Alchemy City. Grandmaster Zhou did not mention Ling Han's standards in alchemy in too much detail, but only revealed the subtle message that his disciple was no longer inferior to himself. Even so, the Alchemy City was still in an uproar. Did this mean that they now had another 4-star Grandmaster? A great feast was held, and those like those previous holy sons and holy daughters were all convinced now.
They did not dare to harbor the slightest disloyalty at all.
Ling Han had already become a 4-star Grandmaster, and who knew, he might have reached the 7th Refinement as well, or Grandmaster Zhou would not have said that he was no longer inferior to Meal. This was too shocking.
Only a few tens of thousands of years had passed, and another such king of alchemy had already appeared.
Ha ha ha.
Just when the celebration was being held, a loud laugh rang out, and a young man appeared quickly after.
His arms crossed behind his back, he strode over from the distance as if there was no one around him. Immediately, someone stood up and shouted, "Identify yourself." "Xieyongbing," the young man announced proudly, and then paused slightly. "Western Celestial Realm, Ancient Alchemy Tower." Commotion rose up among the crowd. This young man was actually an heir of the Ancient Alchemy Tower. It should be known that whether in terms of cultivation or alchemy, the Western Celestial Realm had surpassed the Eastern Celestial Realm, and it was a crushing superiority at that. Not only did the Ancient Alchemy Tower have a considerable number of 4-star alchemists, they even had the true big players of alchemy 5-star alchemists. Then what was the meaning of Xieyongbing's visit now? Chapter 2400. Forcing Abdication. Grandmaster Zhou frowned slightly. In the past, there had also been visitors from the Ancient Alchemy Tower, claiming they wanted to improve the Eastern Celestial Realm skill in alchemy. But in truth, it was just an attempt to seize power and turn Alchemy City into their private possession. And here was another.
However, he immediately broke into a smile. Others might not be aware, but he was very clear that his disciple was already a 9th Refinement Supreme Grandmaster.
Aside from 5-star Grandmasters, who else could suppress Ling Han?
An attempt to seize power in cultivation had to be based on true battle prowess, while trying to seize power over alchemy would be based on skill in alchemy. Ling Han was already invincible, so whom could he fear?
With this in mind, he did not show any temper.
Instead, he revealed a smile, appearing very calm and steady.
Though Grandmaster Zhou had not stepped out, there were naturally those who wanted to curry favor with him that would speak up. "Friend Xie, our chairperson has just returned, and has just become a 4-star Grandmaster. Why don't you join us for a celebratory cup of wine?"
A hint of disdain appeared in Xieyongbing's expression. "It is precisely because I have heard that the great Alchemy City is actually in the hands of a little brat, and so have come to see whether this person has the character for it."
These words had gone too far, and a number of people immediately stood up, glaring at him angrily. If they did not show their loyalty now, what would they be waiting for? Xie Yongbing was completely disdainful, and instead revealed his badge. Instantly, a ring of shocked exclamations rang out. 4-star Grandmaster. It was really unexpected that such a young man would actually be a 4-star Grandmaster. Looking at Ling Han, he was also unreasonably young. His flame of life having only been burning for several million years with time acceleration effects, the flame of life would not be sped up. Everyone couldn't help but feel rueful. The present world truly belonged to the youth. And with such a show, at least half of those that had previously voluntarily stood up sat back down quietly. And it was not that the other half did not want to sit back down, but rather they could not bring themselves to, because others were looking at them. They had to find a suitable chance to, right? Chairperson Ling. Xie Yongbing saw everyone's embarrassing actions, and merely crooked his lips, revealing a hint of disdain. He turned to Ling Han. I heard that you are constantly absent from Alchemy City. What right do you have to lead this sacred land of alchemy of the Eastern Celestial Realm then? Everyone was surprised. Xie Yongbing was trying to force an abdication in full public now. His purpose was clear, and that was to eject Ling Han from his seat so that he himself could replace him. This was really ruthless. He was just a single person, and he wanted to conquer the holy land of alchemy of the Eastern Celestial Realm on his own. However, he was a 4-star Grandmaster, and with the background of the ancient alchemy tower added into the equation, he did indeed have the right to act so arrogantly. Ling Han smiled faintly. I heard that your father is constantly away from home. Would your mother feel lonely and cold? Instantly, Xie Yongbing's expression twisted in fury. My father is not home. What business is that of yours? You actually dare imply that my mother is having an illicit affair? Damn it, damn you. Yet everyone broke into laughter. This was very simple. Since Xie Yongbing did not want others to interfere in his own family business, what right did he have to interfere in the affairs of others? Was there any need for an outsider to criticize or give orders about Alchemy City? Moreover, though Ling Han was absent, there was still Grandmaster Zicheng who was helping him take care of matters, and everything was organized and systematic. Xie Yongbing, you are really just being a busybody. Ling Han, you have gone too far. Xie Yongbing calmed down. He could not just go with Ling Han's flow and lose control of himself. Ling Han smiled slightly. Because you came, we treated you as a guest, and did not chase you out. However, if you are so determined to speak poorly, I shall oblige you. He paused, and then called out. Come, please expel this big mouth Xie from here. Pooh! Hearing the nickname that Ling Han had given him, quite a number of people spluttered in laughter. 2 guards walked towards Xie Yongbing, and when they were close enough they said, Young Master Xie, this way please. Who dares? A cold, eerie voice rang out, and an elder had suddenly appeared behind Xie Yongbing. His hair was white, but his features were young, his face rosy, and complexion shockingly smooth and bright. He waved his hand slightly. Pung pung. Those 2 guards were instantly sent flying. Thankfully, he observed propriety, and merely sent them backwards, and did not wound the 2 of them. With such an aggressive move, everyone stood up once more, looking at him angrily. Hee hee. The elder smirked coldly. Boom, his incredibly frightening aura surged out madly. Ascending origin tier. Consummate level. When they sensed this aura, everyone's expressions changed. This was too terrifying. He was a consummate level ascending origin tier, invincible against anyone beneath the Celestial King tier. Though there were many hidden talents in Alchemy City, they definitely did not have any Celestial Kings, and while there was indeed a considerable number of ascending origin tiers, the number that had reached the consummate level could be counted on a single hand. How do I address you, sir? An elder stood up. He was the clan leader of a noble clan of the Alchemy City, the Lu clan, with cultivation level of consummate level ascending origin tier. Chen Wui, the first elder replied proudly. What is it? Are you planning to step out? The clan leader of the Lu clan smirked coldly. The cultivation and alchemy fields of Alchemy City shared both honor and shame. Hence, he stepped out at the first instant. He shook his head. I just wish to protect the order of Alchemy City. I forbid anyone from being insolent here. When he said the word insolent,
He had already charged out, surging towards Qian Wui.
Trash of Eastern Celestial Realm. Qian Wui smirked coldly. His figure advanced suddenly as he sent out a palm strike. Pang! The terrifying aura shook the heavens and earth. The two elites immediately brought their battle into the skies. Boom, boom, boom. Light exploded, illuminating the skies. Everyone could not see clearly.
They could only see endless light flashing in the skies, while their ears heard enormous blasts, but they had completely no idea how the battle was progressing, and who had the upper hand.
They were really too far from this level. The Empress only glanced, and then said, "He's going to lose." Ling Han nodded. He knew that the Empress was talking about the clan leader of the Lu clan. Though that person was also a consummate level ascending origin tier, his aptitude was ordinary, but Qian Wui was a king tier. A king tier could be invincible against an opponent of the same cultivation level, and though ascending origin tier was not that impressive, in circumstances where both fighters were of the same cultivation level, the king tier would definitely have a tremendous advantage. As expected, it was only about 100 moves, and a figure was seen falling from the skies. With a thud, he landed heavily on the ground, creating a deep hole from the impact. Who was it? There was no need to check, because Qian Wui had already shot down from the skies, landing steadily on the ground. Then the person who had been struck down definitely had to be the clan leader of the Lu clan. "You can't even last a single blow," Qian Wui scoffed. He had blocked about 100 strikes, and it naturally was not that he could not last a single blow. But Qian Wui was the victor. Was there any significance in refuting this point? Dead silence fell. Though this was Alchemy City, they similarly respected elites. Qian Wui naturally was this kind of elite. This was very domineering. One used his strength as a suppression tactic, while the other exhibited unmatched standards in alchemy, and added with the fame of the ancient alchemy tower, it was indeed possible that the master of Alchemy City could be replaced overnight. Grandmaster Zi Cheng's expression involuntarily changed. He indeed had confidence in Ling Han's strength in alchemy, but someone was already hostile right on their doorstep, so it was natural that he could not just sit by idly and watch. "Master!" Yet Ling Han placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let me." How could this kind of trifling matter need to trouble his master? Ling Han stated evenly, "Xie Yongbing, what do you want to do? Compete with me in alchemy, and if you lose, scram." Xie Yongbing declared very arrogantly.
Qian Wui was a consummate level ascending origin tier king tier, who could suppress every single elite here all by himself, and added with his skill in alchemy, the two of them could easily occupy the sacred land of alchemy of the Eastern Celestial Realm.
Chapter 2401. Ranked number 17. Ling Han chuckled. "Since you wish to seek your own humiliation, I shall oblige." He also had the intention to impose his might, and had thus decided to compete with Xie Yongbing in alchemy. Otherwise, if he moved, even if there were 100 Qian Wui, they would be no match for him. Qian Wui clearly did not have that self-awareness. In his eyes, Ling Han was merely at small accomplishment level of the ascending origin tier. He would be able to defeat him with just a single finger. "We shall compete first in the grade of alchemical pill," Xie Yongbing said. All right. Ling Han did not mind. They did not enter into an alchemy chamber. Because Qian Wui did not understand alchemy, Xie Yongbing naturally could not feel reassured. He feared that Ling Han would play some kind of trick inside without anyone watching. Their two cauldrons were simply just set up in an empty space, no more than 9 meters between them. The two of them walked over simultaneously, each taking out their own medicinal ingredients, and began to refine them. They both had just a single chance, and if the cauldron exploded, it would be considered a failure. There were no second chances. Xie Yongbing was very confident. He was an alchemy prodigy, and had already become a 4-star grandmaster 30 million years ago. The success rate of concocting a 4-star alchemical pill was as high as 90%. Hence, he deliberately chose to concoct an alchemical pill with a high difficulty level. Ancient King Pill. This was a practically lost alchemical pill. Among 4-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level of concoction caused it to be ranked at number 17. He did not go and check on Ling Han. As long as the latter was also concocting an alchemical pill, and was not cheating, that would be enough.
Of course, he actually did not fear that Ling Han would take out a ready-made pill, either, because it was practically impossible for its difficulty level to surpass the difficulty level of Ancient King Pill. The two of them began pill concoction. Ling Han quietly activated his time physique so that the time flow over the small area where he himself and Xie Yongbing were would be accelerated. Because he had to affect an entire area, Ling Han could only speed up the flow of time 100 times, or the burden on him would be too high. Only over a day had passed in the outside world, and Ling Han and Xie Yongbing were both done. Their pills were completed. The acceleration of time was quietly dispelled. Because Xie Yongbing had been focused on pill concoction, he did not notice this fact at all. He proudly held the alchemical pill that he had just concocted, and declared, "I have refined a 4-star alchemical pill, the Ancient King Pill. Among 4-star alchemical pills, its difficulty of concoction can be ranked in the 17th place." Grandmaster Zi Chang, Grandmaster Heavenly Heart, Grandmaster Xueqi all nodded respectively, proving that Xie Yongbing had spoken the truth. When it involved alchemy, there was absolutely no way that they would be prejudiced and neglect justice. Having gained the approval of 3 grandmasters, Xie Yongbing was even prouder, thinking that he would definitely be winning. He looked towards Qian Wui again, but saw that Qian Wui was wearing a strange expression. He did not know it, but Qian Wui was clear that Ling Han had used time acceleration. Someone who was versed in the regulations of time was practically invincible before Celestial King tier. It could be claimed that he would be invincible in a battle of equal levels. He should be able to suppress Ling Han, right? Qian Wui thought. He had a superior lead of 2 minor levels, and also had the aptitude of a king tier. No matter how heaven-defying the regulations of time was, there was no way that it could help Ling Han to breach the gap of 2 minor levels of the ascending origin tier. With this in mind, his confidence returned. Ling Han also handed over the alchemical pill in his hands, and said, 6 Suns Green Spirit Pill, 4-star alchemical pill. He did not continue the introduction, because even he did not know the difficulty level of concocting the 6 Suns Green Spirit Pill. He had come up with it on his own with his own studies of the alchemical pill that he had obtained in the treasure chamber. The difficulty level of pill concoction was extremely high. 6 Suns Green Spirit Pill? Grandmaster Zi Chang and the others all looked blank. It was as if they had never heard of this 4-star alchemical pill. Xie Yongbing also scoffed. This brat had concocted an alchemical pill that no one even knew about, and he wanted to lie his way out? TSK, it might not even be 4 stars at all. Wait. Grandmaster Heavenly Heart suddenly stood up. I might have seen it before in an ancient book. You guys just wait. I'll come back in a short while. He left. Thankfully, the speed of ascending origin tier was very high. In just a short while, he had already run back like a gust of wind, and there was indeed an ancient book in his hands. Grandmaster Zi Chang and Grandmaster Xueqi both leaned their heads closer, and after reading for a while, they both looked stunned. 6 Suns Green Spirit Pill. Among ancient pill recipes, the difficulty level of concoction is placed 19th. Grandmaster Heavenly Heart read out loud. It was actually as high as 19th place. Xie Yongbing was slightly surprised. But so what if it was 19th place? His Ancient King Pill was ranked 17th. Hold on, wasn't it the 9 Cauldron Phoenix Return Pill that was ranked 19th? Never mind, forget it. It was fine as long as he won. His expression was filled with pride, and as his eyes swept over Grandmaster Zi Chang and the others, his gaze was urging them. Aren't you guys going to announce the results yet? Grandmaster Zi Chang opened his mouth and said, everyone should be aware that in the inheritance of pill recipes, there are a great many that have disappeared or were lost in time. Everyone nodded. That was not the case for just alchemy. It was the same for cultivation as well. Still, what do you mean by saying these words? Grandmaster Zi Chang continued, the Ancient King Pill is ranked 17th in terms of difficulty level of pill concoction, and this is the ranking among the pill recipes that we presently possess, but in the complete collection of ancient pill recipes. He paused, and realization dawned on them. There were too many pill recipes that had been lost now, and they naturally had been removed, so that what originally should be 30th in terms of difficulty level had now become 25th, or even 20th. Xie Yongbing's body also trembled. He only had a grasp of an advantage of 2 places. As long as there were more than 2 pill recipes that were lost before that, Ling Han would turn the tables around and surpass him instead. Grandmaster Zhou smiled, and continued, in the rankings of ancient pill recipes, the Six Suns Green Spirit Pill is ranked 19th, and the Ancient King Pill is 32nd. Fuck, there was such a wide gap. Everyone was in an uproar, and at the same time was extremely excited. It was still their chairperson that was more skilled, and more awesome. Xie Yongbing's face turned pale, but he immediately shouted, "You must have conspired to try and deceive me." Grandmaster Zhou smiled slightly, and tossed the ancient book in his hands over to Xie Yongbing. "Do not even dream of destroying the ancient book. The three of us have read it, and we naturally have our own conclusions." Xie Yongbing hurriedly ruffled through the pages, and when he swept his gaze over the page, his expression was ashen. Indeed, Grandmaster Zhou had not lied. His first reaction was to destroy the book, and then vehemently deny it. But Grandmaster Zhou had already stated clearly before, so what if he denied their judgment? The three of them were judges here. Xie Yongbing took a deep breath, calming his emotions. He had not lost completely. He did not believe that he would lose to Ling Han in the area of spirit refinement. "Fine, we'll compete again in spirit refinement," Xie Yongbing declared loudly. "Sure." Ling Han made a gesture of invitation. The two of them continued pill concoction, and it was still that alchemical pill from previously. First refinement. Second refinement. Third refinement. To become a 4-star grandmaster, one should be able to do 5th refinement at least. There was no doubt about that. Hence, before 5th refinement, Xie Yongbing did not even cast a glance at Ling Han. It was right until it was after 5th refinement that he finally stared at Ling Han out of the corner of his eyes. 6th refinement. 7th refinement. Everyone couldn't help but become nervous. This was a 7th refinement grandmaster. This had already reached Grandmaster Zheng's level. However, neither of them stopped, and both began their 8th refinement. At this moment, even Xie Yongbing looked nervous. He indeed could attain 8th refinement, but he could not guarantee that every attempt would be successful. In fact, the chances of failure were considerably high. He had to be extremely careful, and very cautious. The process of spirit refinement could be sped up, and a day later, both of them stopped. A hint of joy appeared in Xie Yongbing's expression. He had succeeded. However, when his eyes passed over Ling Han, his expression immediately became extremely ugly. Ling Han had also completed 8th refinement. Chapter 2402. Complete Victory. Xie Yongbing knew that his strength was limited to the 8th refinement. If he proceeded to do the 9th refinement, the only path before him would definitely be failure, and the alchemical pill would explode. If their accomplishments in spirit refinement were equal, then Ling Han would be able to defeat him with the difficulty level of concoction of the alchemical pill. He still held a sliver of hope, and that was his skill in spirit refinement surpassed Ling Han. But very soon, he paled in shock because Ling Han had not stopped, but rather continued spirit refinement. The 9th refinement. Xie Yongbing could not believe it. Ling Han was actually capable of 9th refinement. No, there was no way he could succeed. Xie Yongbing thought fervently. If he forcefully attempted 9th refinement, it would only result in the pill exploding. In that case, his victory was assured. Haha, not bad, not bad. He withdrew his hands, and stood watching from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Ling Han began the 9th refinement, and with the time acceleration effects, a day passed in the snap of a finger. He finished and stood up, and did not continue with the 10th refinement. In any case, he was definitely winning, and had fully established the image of his invincible might in the hearts of the residents of Alchemy City. Chairperson is mighty. Chairperson is imperious. Chairperson is invincible. Everyone cheered. Ling Han had an absolutely crushing advantage over his opponent. Furthermore, what kind of concept was the 9th refinement? One more step further, and Ling Han would be capable of becoming a 5-star grandmaster. This was far too astonishing. Xie Yongbing was completely dejected. He had actually lost to Ling Han, someone who was even younger than him. Meanwhile, Qian Wui revealed his killing intent. No matter how strong Ling Han was in alchemy, so what? This was a world of cultivators, after all. As long as he got rid of Ling Han, Xie Yongbing could still ascend to the position of chairperson. He was just about to make his move when he saw that Ling Han actually just happened to cast a glance at him. "Don't court death," Ling Han stated calmly, a flash of killing intent flickering in his eyes. Qian Wui felt a chill that caused all the bones in his body to feel like they were frozen. This glance, this killing intent was really too terrifying, making him feel like he was facing an invincible celestial king. However, he immediately pepped himself up. Ling Han was just a mere small accomplishment ascending origin tier, so how could he be a match for him? Even if the other party had a grasp of regulations of time, so what? With a gap of 2 minor levels, how could that possibly affect him? On the other hand, as long as he flooded the whole area with the power of regulation, Ling Han would not be able to draw on the regulations of time, so even if the regulations of time was supreme over all other regulations, so what? He instantly became more daring, and his right hand's fingers formed claws. The power of regulation was gathering. It was one thing if he did not make a move, but if he did, it would be a powerful strike. He was planning to kill Ling Han in a single stroke. Ling Han smirked coldly. He was naturally able to discover Qian Wui's dirty tricks. This old wretch was really seeking his own death. "Young man, you are too arrogant." Qian Wui moved aggressively. Boom, endless fiery waves spread out as he laughed loudly. His right hand seemed to have formed the claws of a giant beast from the primitive era as he grabbed out at Ling Han. "Not good." Grandmaster Zi Chang and the others all stood up. Ling Han's skill in alchemy was practically off the charts, but his cultivation level was only at the small accomplishment level of the ascending origin tier. The gap between him and Qian Wui was really too wide. And this was a sudden strike from Qian Wui at that, and also a powerful move that he had planned long in advance. How could it not be extremely strong and powerful? Ling Han merely smiled faintly as his right hand balled into a fist. Frightening physical power built up. This was the most basic power of a Genesis world, and was superior to regulations. Though he could not use it directly, and could only use it in the form of brute force, it was already enough. Boom, he brandished his fist, and struck out at Qian Wui. Pang! Ling Han's fist was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Qian Wui's massive claws shattered at the first contact, which also caused Qian Wui to grunt lowly. His right hand was covered entirely with blood. However, Ling Han's fist did not look like it was going to stop, and was still flying towards Qian Wui. It was as if even if there was a great star ahead, it would still be turned into dust by the force of this punch. Qian Wui's expression changed drastically. He finally knew that the previous feeling of terror that he had experienced was not a misconception, but rather that this young man was truly terrifyingly strong. He hurriedly bounced back in retreat, but how could he possibly be Ling Han's match in terms of explosive power? Ling Han caught up with him, and sent out his fists in a barrage of punches. Pang 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 pang. It was just a mere 3 punches, and Qian Wui's shield of defensive origin power crumbled completely. Then, Qian Wui could only throw up blood as he was entirely and forcefully pummeled into mush. Actually, Ling Han was very good-tempered. As long as no one trifled with him, he would also be very amicable, but if anyone dared to trifle with him, he would also retaliate and beat him to the point of throwing up blood and breaking bones, and since Qian Wui wanted to kill him, he naturally could only pay him back. Everyone was grabbing their heads in shock. Just what had they witnessed? A consummate-level ascending origin tier elite had actually been beaten to death by a barrage of punches from Ling Han. Fuck! Who could believe this? But only an instant later, everyone erupted in a tsunami wave of cheering. Too strong. Their chairperson was truly too strong. His natural talent in alchemy was unmatched, and he was about to advance into the ranks of 5-star grandmasters, and his strength in cultivation was also world-shaking. He had beaten a great consummate-level ascending origin tier until the latter burst with just a few punches. This was practically comparable to a celestial king's power. Ling Han turned to look at Xie Yongbing, a faint smile curling up the corners of his lips. Xie Yongbing was completely dejected, and his expression was ashen. How could there be such a freak in this world? Reaching heights that others could not even look up to in both cultivation and alchemy. However, why was the other's gaze so frightening? Ling Han laughed. Since you like this place so much, You should just stay here from now onwards, and concoct alchemical pills for me every day. Xie Yongbing couldn't help but nod. Though Ling Han was smiling, he could only feel an endless chill. If he said one word in refusal, he would probably be pulverized instantly. Ling Han patted Xie Yongbing's shoulder. That's right. Since we are kindred spirits, we should help each other. Xie Yongbing forced a grin, yet it looked even worse than a smile. He was nodding repeatedly, yet was cursing Ling Han violently in his mind. If he was strong enough, he would definitely destroy Ling Han. Ling Han's words suddenly changed. Right, exactly why have so many waves of your people come here? Nothing much, we just wanted to expand our territory, Xie Yongbing quickly answered. Ling Han patted his shoulder again. Misbehaving again? There were indeed some gains to be had in the Eastern Celestial Realm, but it could not compare to the Western Celestial Realm at all. Furthermore, the boundless seas separated them, and the journey to and forth was extremely inconvenient unless they were planning to permanently settle here. Even if Xie Yongbing conquered Alchemy City, he would be very soon overthrown. Xie Yongbing continued to shake his head. We really just wanted to rake in some treasures and resources. Ling Han cracked a grin. Looks like I can only search your soul. Xie Yongbing instantly paled in shock. With a soul search, not only would he reveal all the secrets of his lifetime, it would also endanger his life, or he would basically become a retard. Don't make me wait too long, Ling Han stated. Xie Yongbing hesitated for a while, and then finally replied, It is rumored that there is an ancient pill recipe hidden somewhere in Alchemy City. What ancient pill recipe? Ling Han asked. It's called the Celestial King Pill, Xie Yongbing immediately revealed without any further hesitation. Celestial King Pill? Ling Han asked smilingly. Could it be that one would directly become a Celestial King after consuming it? That's right. Unexpectedly, Xie Yongbing really nodded. At this, even Ling Han became solemn. There actually was such an amazing alchemical pill in this world that consuming one would allow one to directly leap into Celestial King tier. No wonder there were still people endlessly coming here from the Western Celestial Realm even with how high their standards of alchemy were. The value of this pill recipe was really too high. Chapter 2403 Celestial King Pill. Ling Han believed that this kind of alchemical pill would definitely have great restrictions after consuming it, whether it was restrictions on the user's cultivation level or future advancements. To say that it had absolutely no disadvantages was too illogical. Oh, so you have come to find this pill recipe? Ling Han nodded. Come, tell me what information you have gotten. Xie Yongbing stuttered, but still revealed the information that they had obtained, fearing that he would irritate Ling Han and have his soul searched. The latter did not fear his background of the ancient alchemy tower at all. Having heard his words, Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. What Xie Yongbing knew was actually not much of a secret in ancient alchemy tower, but most people would not believe this myth. How could such an amazing alchemical pill possibly exist? But there was also a minority that believed it, and did not hesitate to journey all the way over the seas to come here. Ling Han dismissed Xie Yongbing, and told him that he could only leave after he had concocted alchemical pills for a total of 1 million years in Alchemy City. When he told the matter of the Celestial King Pill to Grandmaster Zhou, the latter's expression was also a little strange. I have indeed heard of the Celestial King Pill before. It is rumored that it had been created by our founder in his later years, but it was also because he had created this pill recipe that he was targeted by the heaven and earth, and had thus died in the heavenly tribulation. But this has always just been a legend, and has never been believed. As it turned out, this was no secret in Alchemy City, either. It was just that no one had chosen to believe it. There's no smoke without fire. Perhaps there really is some truth, Ling Han murmured. He was very concerned about this matter. If it could directly advance one to Celestial King tier, then Lu Yutong, Li Xichan, and even his parents could become Celestial Kings. Then, as long as the heaven and earth was not destroyed, there was no need to worry that they would be killed by the immortals' tribulation. He researched carefully. The information given by Xie Yongbing was very vague. This was also very normal. If the location had been clearly pointed out, there would have been no need for him to come and attempt to become the chairperson of Alchemy City. He could have instead chosen to just take the pill recipe and leave. It was precisely because he did not have many clues that Xie Yongbing needed to grasp authority and mobilize all the residents of Alchemy City to conduct a search. With a command from Ling Han, the whole Alchemy City was mobilized and began searching for this pill recipe. 3 months later, there was more and more information about the ancient era that Ling Han had grasp of. Initially, this was just scattered bits, and with them alone, nothing strange could be perceived, but when they were pieced together, a conclusion came to light.
Alchemy City has been rebuilt before. Ling Han, Hu Niu, and the other women arrived at a group of buildings. In the past, there used to be a temple here, but with the ages, the temple has been razed to the ground, and new buildings were built on its original site.
Lord Chairperson.
Their arrival alerted someone in the building, and he hurriedly came out to greet him. Ling Han smiled. Sorry. We plan to dismantle this place, but we promise that we will rebuild it for you. Also, here is some compensation.
He handed a spatial god tool over to the other.
The owner's expression was filled with joy. Since Lord Chairperson likes it, just dismantle it as you like. There is no need for any compensation. Isn't it just a few buildings? It's no big deal.
As long as they could develop some relations with Ling Han, wouldn't he just be able to do as he liked in Alchemy City?
Ling Han shook his head. Things should be perfectly clear-cut. Seeing that Ling Han was slightly displeased now, the owner could only take the spatial god tool. Ling Han moved, and the entire structure was destroyed. Then he dug 3 feet into the ground, and indeed, the ruins of an ancient structure were discovered underground. They excavated the whole ruins, and removed the dirt bit by bit. As they hammered the tiles and smashed the pillars, they searched thoroughly. The whole group was made up of great elites, so their speed was naturally fast. In merely slightly half a day's time, they discovered a spatial god tool inside a rock. It should have been stuffed in. The rock just happened to have a natural crack, and if one did not deliberately observe, it would be very easily missed. Ling Han extended his divine sense within, and saw that there were some alchemical pills inside, but there were not many. Furthermore, the spatial god tool itself did not have preservation effects. Who knew how many years had already passed, and these alchemical pills were all already expired. Aside from this, there was a tiny bookshelf, and there were multiple books placed on the shelf. Ling Han carefully took them out. Because these books had also experienced too many years, the paper would crumble at the slightest touch. He used both regulations of time and space, and flipped through the pages lightly. If anything really happened, Ling Han had enough time to make repairs with how the flow of time had slowed down. These were all pill recipes. One book recorded a single pill recipe, and they were all 5 stars at that. Ling Han memorized them one by one. These books really could only be flipped through once, because they would turn into dust after they were flipped through. When he reached the 11th book, Ling Han's eyes lit up. Celestial King Pill. It really existed, he thought, and hurriedly flipped through the book with even greater care. After reading, the entire book turned into dust, and Ling Han exhaled lightly. If the introduction of the pill recipe was true, the Celestial King Pill could indeed help one become a Celestial King, but there was a prerequisite: he had to have reached the peak stage consummate level of the ascending origin tier. This had only saved one from having to go through the celestial path. Of course, it was possible that only a single person out of 10,000 ascending origin tiers that went into the celestial path could become a Celestial King. In fact, it might not even be one. And the ingredients used to concoct the Celestial King Pill. Ling Han thought for a while, and couldn't help but gape. There was only one word for it: wasteful. This was really wasteful. Not only did it require an astonishing amount of Celestial King tier great herbs, it even needed celestial seeds. Celestial seeds could only appear on the celestial path, and those who walked the celestial path would gather the incomplete celestial seeds, fuse them into their bodies, and piece them together bit by bit, which ultimately would become a complete celestial seed. Once the celestial seed was formed completely, one could then advance into Celestial King tier. But the process of forming the celestial seed was too difficult and too dangerous, as they would be targeted by the heaven and earth. They would also be seen as prey by ferocious wild beasts. It was like the incomplete celestial seed was a human-shaped great herb, and could be refined. Of course, what was the most dangerous was still their competitors. As long as they had not yet become a Celestial King, the celestial seed could be snatched by others. and to concoct the Celestial King pill, a complete celestial seed could not be lacking. Hence, the price was too exorbitant. The price of concocting a single pill was enough to help a considerable number of ascending origin tiers advance into Celestial King tier. But the value of the Celestial King pill lay in the fact that 99% of people who walked the celestial path would fail, but after consuming the Celestial King pill, it was 100% ensured that one would be able to advance into the Celestial King tier.
It was completely worth such a great expense. Ling Han nodded. Actually, it was absolutely impossible for those like Lu Yutong, his parents, and even Feng Piyun and the others to attain Celestial King tier, so they could only achieve it through consuming the Celestial King pill. I truly anticipate the celestial path opening this time round, Ling Han murmured. He explained the ingredients of the Celestial King pill, and all the women were dumbfounded. It was really unknown how many people could actually concoct this kind of alchemical pill. Perhaps it would need the help of a heavenly Venerate, right? After he returned, Ling Han related the matter of the Celestial King pill to Grandmaster Zhou, and naturally wrote down the pill recipe as well. There was no need to keep this secret. Merely the terrifying kind of ingredients required would be enough to stop others in their tracks. Grandmaster Zhou could only grimace as well. Celestial seeds could not be brought out of the celestial path, which meant that the pill concoction had to be carried out on the celestial path itself. This was practically an impossible feat, because the realm had its own rules. Celestial kings could not enter into the celestial path, and with just the strength of ascending origin tier, how many could one hope to obtain? It was possible that this celestial king would only exist in theory for all eternity. Chapter 2404 Rock Demon King. After staying a great many days in Alchemy City, Ling Han set out once more, heading towards Separation Resentment City so that he could reunite with his uncle, cousin, and the others. With their present strength, they naturally had a smooth journey. Even if they encountered bad people, the latter would be the ones that would be beaten. Thus, after half a year's time, they arrived at Separation Resentment City. On their journey, Ling Han was also consistently strengthening his level of mastery of 10th Refinement, as well as concentrating his attention on his studies of the Celestial King pill, concocting it in his mind more than 10 million times. Failure definitely could not be accepted. Every single portion of ingredients was too valuable, and a single failure would be an indescribably enormous waste. He had also imposed time effects on himself, so the time of half a year was actually around 500 years or so, allowing his grasp of 10th Refinement to become more proficient. More or less, he would only fail once in every 100 attempts. Yet Ling Han was still dissatisfied. His lowest standard was to fail once in every 1,000 times, and the best scenario was to fail once for every 10,000 times. Only then would he refine Celestial King tier alchemical pills. Celestial King tier great herbs were really too valuable and rare. He could not afford the waste. After entering Separation Resentment City, they headed directly to the desolate mountains where Yu Zhanshan and the others had previously settled down, but when they arrived, they couldn't help but get a shock. That was because a large town had now been built here. It was situated at the foot of the mountains, and there were various magnificent palaces halfway up the mountains and at the peaks. Looks like Yu Zhanshan and the others were developing like wildfire. Ling Han and his group walked towards the town, and could see people coming in and out. There were a great many traders and servants, and they were pulling cart after cart of goods out of town. There were also cart after cart of goods being moved into town. Ling Han and his group entering did not draw anyone's attention. Perhaps everyone thought that they, too, were traders. They entered the town. This place was actually exceedingly huge. If this was the ancient realm, it would be comparable to a large city. Roaming around for a while, they arrived at a restaurant. This kind of place was always the most convenient location to get information. As expected, after hearing the guests chatting, Ling Han soon found out that Yu Zhanshan and the others had indeed gained a bit of a reputation, and had built a trade business here, but it was not a very large-scale one. Otherwise, what Ling Han and the others saw when they came would not have been caravans, as they would be completely capable of stowing away the goods in their respective spatial god tools. Once we're done eating, we'll go and visit Uncle and the others. Ling Han and his group left the restaurant, heading up the mountains. The higher-ups here were all residing on the mountains, where there was more abundance of spiritual qi, which was more suited to cultivation. However, while there weren't any restrictions on entering and leaving the town, Was it the same in the case of wanting to ascend the mountains?
Stop right there. 2 guards immediately stopped Ling Han and his group. This place is the Forbidden Land. Do you all have a permit for entry? Ling Han smiled and shook his head. No. Then please return. This is not a place for sightseeing. One of the guards stated seriously.
Ling Han asked, what is it? Have you all occupied the mountains and declared yourselves the rulers? The 2 guards were both a little baffled.
Are you stupid?
Don't tell me that when you barge into the place of another and are refused entry, you will require the person to show proof that this house belonged to them?
Go, go, go.
They were no longer in the mood to converse with Ling Han, and chased them off directly. Ling Han was only teasing them and said, please go and inform Yu Zhenshan or Yu Kaiyu, or Feng Piyun or Murong Qing would do as well, and say that Ling Han has returned.
Ling Han?
Ling Han. The 2 guards were both stunned. They naturally knew who Ling Han was, but was it this guy in front of them?
They both shook their heads.
Young man, you have grasped a bit of information, and have deliberately come to impersonate him, right? Leave quickly, or when the lords come, you will not be in for anything good. It was mainly because Ling Han's previous attitude had left a poor impression on them, or who knew, they would really have gone to make a report, but now? They did not believe him the slightest bit. The women were also laughing delicately.
Who asked Ling Han to enjoy speaking cheekily?
Now, he was actually being looked down on by several minor characters in the heavenly body tier, and they were even chasing him off. Ling Han shook his head helplessly, and could only release a loud cry, his voice rumbling across the sky like thunder, even the heaven and earth paling. He was close to attaining the Celestial King tier, and had that kind of strength.
Who is it?
Who dares to behave impudently in our coiled clouds mountains?
Who is the insolent, arrogant man? Countless people leaped down from the many mountains, but none of them could fly.
Clearly, not a single one of them was at the severing mundane tier. They rapidly traversed between the mountains, and soon arrived here, gathering closely around Ling Han. Seeing how there were more women than men in Ling Han's group, with a seriously unbalanced ratio, and when there were a few indescribably exquisite women as well, they felt a kind of dizziness overcome them. They were too beautiful, so they had lost all other thoughts. Their only wish was to just continue looking at them forever. However, there were definitely people with stronger wills among them, and they immediately shouted, "Who are you people?
Why are you behaving with such impudence here?" Ling Han smiled. "My name is Ling Han. I have come to visit old friends."
When everyone heard this, they were all doubtful. They had already heard a great many times the story of Ling Han, and admired him very much as well. But in their hearts, tens of thousands of years had already passed, so even if Ling Han returned, he would look like a middle-aged man. This man in front of them was younger than the majority of them. How could he possibly be Ling Han? "You actually dare impersonate Lord Ling Han?" Quite a number of people exclaimed menacingly. In their hearts and eyes, Ling Han was a god that could not condone the slightest blasphemy. Immediately, one of the quick-tempered people moved, stabbing out with a spear that moved like a silver viper. Ling Han casually grabbed the long spear, and smilingly asked, "Why is it just you youngsters here?
Where are the lords?"
"The lords are presently discussing a serious matter." Wu, someone who was more honest, truly explained, and as a result, one of the others naturally covered his mouth.
Ling Han gave an "oh." No wonder he had not seen Feng Piyun and the others come out. As it turned out, they were occupied by something. It looked like what they were discussing was something very serious at that. Otherwise, they would have at least sent a few severing mundane tears here, right? "We attack together," a young man called out.
He seemed to have great authority, as with a single command from him, they all made their moves.
Ling Han pressed down a hand casually, and the regulations of space surged. Everyone was bound.
They still maintained the posture of preparing to attack, but could not move the slightest bit.
They were stunned. Who exactly was this? He was too powerful.
He was just one person, and they were all completely restrained just with him pressing down a hand casually.
Roar!
A roar rang out, and waves of dust appeared in the mountains, rapidly extending towards here. "It is Lord Rock Demon King," someone immediately exclaimed in pleased surprise.
Ling Han had only restricted their ability to move, but had not prevented them from speaking.
"Haha, Lord Rock Demon King would definitely beat him to tears.
Just wait and you'll be crying soon.
The young men were all filled with anticipation. In their hearts and eyes, the Rock Demon King was practically invincible. The dust and dirt rolled out in waves, and a stone figure was also revealed. He was rushing forth at an astonishing speed. Closer. Some young people couldn't help but look shocked, because the Rock Demon King did not look like he was going to slow down at all. From the look of things, he was going to make a move on Ling Han directly. But they were still there. If the Rock Demon King crashed into them, they would definitely be turned into blood and mush. Ling Han smiled, and with a flip of his hand, the people that were stuck between them were immediately separated like waves, providing an obstruction-free passageway for the rock golem.
Pang!
The rock golem suddenly crashed towards him, and everyone could feel the ground releasing a moan. This collision was really domineering and powerful. After this blow, this brat must be done for. Chapter 2405. Recruitment. Everyone was certain that Ling Han would definitely be done for with a collision like that. But when they looked again, their eyeballs almost popped out in their shock. Not only was Ling Han completely unwounded at all, Lord Rock Demon King had actually taken the form of a puppy that was jumping and hopping around this man. Fuck. That was Lord Rock Demon King, a being that even Lord Feng and Lord Murong respected extremely. Furthermore, for it to be able to claim the title of Demon King, it was clear how terrifying the Rock Demon King's temper could be. Now, it had actually taken the form of a puppy acting cute and wanting to be doted on. This was practically destroying all their perspectives. They had surely seen wrongly. All this had to be an illusion. They looked again, and now it was even more fun. A small beast had popped out of who knew where, standing on its hind legs. Its hind legs were tough and strong, but its forelegs were extremely short and tiny, with claws curled up in front of the chest, looking like a human. But the small beast was very fierce, as it tore and bit at Lord Rock Demon King. Not good. Lord Rock Demon King had been thrown down. Its mighty physique was for nothing, as it had still been pushed down onto the ground by the small beast. The small beast was now jumping around on Lord Rock Demon King's body. Bang, 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 with every leap, the ground would tremble, showing how frightening the small beast's power was. Everyone's face was ashen. If it was them being stomped on by the little beast, wouldn't their intestines be stomped out as well? Ling Han laughed and said, all right. This is Small Rock. This is Little Terror, and you are family. Though Little Terror had yet to reach its strongest state, it had already recovered to the peak stage of the fourth severance, and was a creature that could become an emperor tier, so its battle prowess was naturally frightening. It easily managed to defeat the stone golem. Ling Han looked back at Small Rock. You've been slacking off, haven't you? Tens of thousands of years have passed, so why haven't you advanced into the dividing soul tier yet? Woof. The rock spirit imitated the barking of a dog as it crouched by Ling Han's feet, looking plaintive. If it cultivated on its own, even if it could advance into the dividing soul tier, that would have to be several tens of billions of years later. A short few tens of thousands of years was not much at all. Furthermore, Master, you didn't give me any rock essence, so how could I be able to grow? All right, I'll give you some. Ling Han scattered casually, and it was all the jade spirits. For the rock spirit, this was definitely comparable to celestial medicines. The rock spirit's eyes shone, and it started hurriedly grabbing these jade stones, while an expression of vigilance stayed on its face. It would definitely fight anyone who dared to approach now. Meanwhile, Little Terror looked on with disdain. Those were just a few stupid stones. Was there any need to value them so much? Come, take me to Big Brother and the others. Ling Han patted the rock golem. The rock spirit nodded quickly, leading the way ahead. Everyone was stunned silly. Who had ever seen Lord Rock Demon King so well-behaved and obedient? There was only one possibility. Ling Han, that lord that existed in legends, had finally returned. The rock spirit led the way, and they arrived at a mountain peak. A dazzling palace was built on the summit. There were guards at the doors, but when they saw the rock spirit leading the way, they were involuntarily surprised. Who did not know that this was an important place, and only the most important people were allowed entry? Though Lord Rock Demon King was indeed qualified, what was the meaning of bringing along so many people with it? Ling Han opened his mouth and called out, "Big brother Feng, third brother Murong, uncle, I'm back."
Xiao xiao xiao.
Suddenly, figures shot out of the palace one after another.
Fourth brother. Ling Han. Master.
A considerable number of people pounced towards them. Meanwhile, Yu Shan looked towards Yu Hongchang. As the siblings reunited, they naturally had much to talk about. The Azura Demon Emperor definitely had the most exaggerated expression, looking as if he had seen his father. He had grabbed hold of Ling Han's leg, and was not letting go. This was a great opportunity to show his loyalty. Immediately, a feast was laid out to welcome Ling Han and his group with a command from Feng Peiyun. After exchanging conventional pleasantries, Ling Han finally asked, "What are you guys discussing? Have you met with some kind of trouble?" Yu Shan nodded. "We have encountered some trouble, but since you are back, everything will definitely be fine." As it turned out, their development was optimistic, and looked like they would be growing bigger and bigger. Thus, one of the forces in the city extended an olive branch to them, wanting to take them under their own authority. Feng Peiyun and the others were discussing whether they should accept this invitation. Once they accepted, their overall safety would be greatly improved because they could raise the banner of that clan. But there was also a disadvantage, and that was they had to hand over a great portion of their profits. Furthermore, while that force was recruiting them, they had not forgotten to issue threats, either. If the time came for their reply, and the reply from Feng Peiyun and the others was refusal, that would very likely be the instant that they would be eliminated. Ling Han smiled faintly. No need to give them any regard. The strongest elite in Separation Resentment City was only at the Immortal Palace tier. He would be able to settle the matter with a single finger. Everyone felt a blind confidence in Ling Han. Since Ling Han said there was no need for any regard, he definitely had absolute confidence. Immediately, they let go of their worries, and began to drink to their heart's content. It was inevitable that Feng Peiyun and Murong Qing would ask about the Rain Emperor. Ling Han had returned, but they had not seen the Rain Emperor, so they were concerned about him. Ling Han laughed loudly. Second brother is now exceedingly powerful. He has long since advanced into the Ascending Origin tier, and has become a monarch star at that. Everyone knew what Ascending Origin tier was, but did not know what monarch star meant, so they all asked curiously. Ling Han took the chance to fill them in, but did not speak of the matter of the realm war. This was too far away from them. In any case, they would not be of much help either, so they should just enjoy their lives here. He took out a great amount of alchemical pills, which he bestowed on them, and at the end, everyone was no longer drinking. Instead, they were all listening to Ling Han's teachings. Limited by their individual aptitude, as well as resources, not one person here had managed to advance into the Dividing Soul tier, so there was naturally no fifth severance either. That would be unrealistic. Even if Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor, there was no way he could help everyone reach the heavens in a single bound. In cultivation, one could ultimately only depend on oneself. Ling Han studied them, and there were but a limited few that could break through to the Dividing Soul tier. They all needed to expend an ocean of resources. Under normal circumstances, they were completely able to nurture a few dozen, or even over 100 Dividing Soul tier elites. Yet Ling Han was unconcerned. What did he want so many resources for? It was natural that he should spend them on his family and friends. A few days later, the deadline given for Feng Peiyun and the others to reply had arrived. That was a noble clan of Separation Resentment City, the Qin clan. The ancestor of the Qin clan was a Heaven Soul elite. If he could take one step further, he would have a say even in Separation Resentment City. Unfortunately, taking this step was as difficult as ascending the heavens. Who knew how many years had already passed, and the ancestor of the Qin clan was still circling around in the Heaven Soul tier, and it was possible that there was no hope for him to ever advance into the Immortal Palace tier at all. He would be slowly consumed by the Immortal's tribulation. The Qin clan indeed came punctually. Ling Han had Feng Peiyun and the others entertain them. In any case, he was only responsible for fighting. He was presently teaching Little Terror. This little guy was a creation of the foreign realm, and could be considered naturally gifted in the foreign realm, being strong from birth. However, after arriving in the celestial realm, it had to start back from the beginning, and its advancement was exceedingly slow.
Thankfully, Little Terror was built differently. It did not need to go to any natural mystery realms for breaking through. As long as its power advanced, it would naturally be able to break through. In fact, it could be said that there was no such thing as cultivation level for it. It could be considered as a smooth, straight line. The stronger it was, the higher its battle prowess, which was unlike cultivators. With every advancement to the next cultivation level, their strength would soar greatly. Little Terror was a natural creation of the foreign realm, and it was highly possible that it possessed the power of heaven and earth of the foreign realm, which had skipped over the level of regulations. Thus, there was naturally no concept of cultivation level for it. This level of being was higher than that. Chapter 2406. Rage of the Qin Clan. After Ling Han taught for a while, he let Wally take the stage. On the matter of the power of heaven and earth, it was definitely Wally that was more knowledgeable. Wally was also very interested in Little Terror. After all, a creation of heaven and earth was rare. He did not mind teaching while he himself studied it. Ling Han sat at the side, and he heard the sound of a hand slamming a table after just a short while. He slowly moved to the conference room. As expected, the envoy from the Qin clan bore an indignant expression as he slammed his hand repeatedly on the table. Fine, we gave you face, but since you don't want it, just wait to be destroyed. A total of 2 people came from the Qin clan, and the speaker at present was a middle-aged man in his 30s. He was a first severance, while the other was a young man in his 20s. The latter was sipping tea, looking completely calm and relaxed. When the middle-aged man finished his words, the young man put his teacup down and coughed lightly. Young master and please. The middle-aged man hurriedly leaned down, as if he was a servant, expressing goodwill to that young man. Only then did the young man say, "You all should consider carefully. Do you truly wish to reject the magnanimous offer of our Qin clan?" Hey. Young master and has already spoken. Have you considered carefully? Don't just decide spontaneously. The middle-aged man immediately used young master and as an intimidation tactic as he pointed at them one after another, looking absolutely like a vile character. This is our final decision, Feng Peyun stated evenly. In the past, he had been a top-tier elite in the small world, so he naturally had his moral integrity and graceful bearing. This was something that a great many people who were stronger than him could not possess. Thus there was the saying, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. You are all a bunch of idiots, the middle-aged man shouted, wanting nothing more than to run over and strangle them. Meanwhile, the young man merely smiled. I really would like to see why you people have so much confidence. He stretched out a hand to grab Feng Peyun. The latter was the strongest elite in here, a 4th severance. As long as he could take Feng Peyun down, he would naturally destroy the confidence of everyone here. Feng Peyun humphed lightly, and moved to greet the blow. His natural talent was far from those of Ling Han and the Rain Emperor, but in the past, he had been able to become a shattering void tier even in the barren lower realm, so he could still be considered a naturally gifted extraordinary genius. However, because the celestial realm was too big, and there were too many geniuses, he was now nothing out of the ordinary. But his battle prowess was considerably strong as well. Furthermore, Ling Han had rushed to improve his battle prowess these last few days. Anything that could be used was used, such as ancestral king blood, high-grade alchemical pills, and so on, and added with time acceleration effects, the increase to his battle prowess was very astonishing. Boom, boom, boom. The two clashed, instantly destroying the Great Hall, and then brought their battle to the skies. Hee, now that young Masterin has moved, that person will definitely lose his life. The middle-aged man gave a wisecrack. Young Masterin, one of the well-known figures of the younger generation of the Qin clan, who was only just a step away from the dividing soul tier. It would not take too long before he would set out to complete his breakthrough. Yet none of those gathered panicked. Even if Feng Peyun was no match, didn't they still have Ling Han? However, in the air, Qinan was getting more and more anxious as he fought. He actually had not managed to take his opponent down. This had far surpassed his expectations because he had expected that he would be able to grasp the upper hand completely in 100 moves, at most, and would be able to build an absolute advantage within 500 moves, yet 200 to 300 moves had already been exchanged now, and not only had he not gotten the upper hand, he was being suppressed instead. He could not accept this.
As an outstanding descendant of the noble Qin clan, he was actually unable to suppress an unorthodox cultivator.
Meanwhile, Feng Peyun was more and more pleased as he fought.
Originally, he had not possessed such strong battle prowess. This was all benefits from the rushed improvement that Ling Han had helped him with, allowing his battle prowess to double. At the beginning, he was still unable to adapt to such powerful strength, but after fighting for a long time, he became proficient, completely suppressing Qin En.
Pang! 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 Light flashed endlessly in the skies as thunderous booms rang out without stopping. After half a day later, a figure suddenly descended from the skies. The middle-aged man immediately laughed loudly.
Ha 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 ha, young Masterin has one E, young Masterin? Young Masterin. After laughing for a while, he only then realized that the person that had dropped down was actually Qin En. Hurriedly, he raced over and helped Qin En to his feet.
Feng Peyun flew down onto the ground.
His confidence soared, feeling like he had returned to the small world, where even though the world was huge, he could still act freely and without restraint.
Scram! Feng Peyun rebuked.
You dare tell us to scram?
The middle-aged man felt disbelief. It should be known that the Qin clan had dividing soul-tier elites. So what if you have defeated Qin En? The Qin clan has a lot of other people that can still restrain you.
Yet Qin En felt that he was shamed, and stopped the admonishment from that middle-aged man. He menacingly declared, so it turns out that there are many hidden talents in Coiled Clouds Mountains.
Fine, I will admit defeat this time round.
He pushed the middle-aged man aside, planning to walk on his own power.
Young Masterin! Young Masterin!
The middle-aged man hurriedly followed after him. However, he had just taken a step when he realized a man was blocking his way. Involuntarily, he was angered and shouted, "Get out of the way!"
Ling Han smiled slightly. Your mouth is too smelly.
I don't think you would remember if you were not taught a lesson. With a wave of his hand, a slap landed immediately, causing the middle-aged man to turn around a few circles on the spot, spitting out a spray of blood as well as over a dozen broken teeth.
Ah!
The middle-aged man yowled, and after finally managing to steady himself, he looked at Ling Han and demanded, You dare to strike me?
Ling Han was surprised. You haven't learnt the lesson yet?
The middle-aged man hurriedly chased after Qin En. He felt absolute fear of Ling Han. The latter had been able to smack him into an idiot with a single strike. There was absolutely no chance he would be Ling Han's match. Meanwhile, Qin En cast a second look at Ling Han and Feng Peyun, and then left without another look backwards.
He would definitely be back.
Ling Han made no move to stop him. In any case, he would be staying here for a while, so the Qin clan could be just something to help him while away the time. The reaction of the Qin clan was considerably faster and considerably more intense this time round. A mere severing mundane tier force had not just refused their generous offer, but had actually wounded their envoy as well. A day later, the Qin clan sent out a great number of troops, with 2 dividing soul tier elites leading, outfitted with 11 severing mundane tiers, and added with a certain number of Genesis tiers.
This team could be considered grand.
Young Master Yun, sorry that you have to see this embarrassment. Among this group from the Qin clan, there was an outsider as well, but if Ling Han had spotted him, he would definitely have been able to recognize him with a single look. Fu Gao Yun, descendant of the main line of the Fu clan, the chief authority in Separation Resentment City, as well as the heir of the clan previously. He had been one of the heirs, but now he was the only heir. Hence, the Qin clan naturally treated Fu Gao Yun with extreme respect.
Meanwhile, Fu Gao Yun paid them no regard.
It just so happened that he had received an invitation to visit the Qin clan, yet coincidentally encountered this matter. On a whim, he thus decided to come and take a look since he was free anyways. He was indeed quite bored. As the noble heir of the Fu clan, he was actually still so sloppy. After so many years, his cultivation level had still increased greatly, reaching the Earth Soul tier, which was extremely impressive. The entire group was aggressive as they charged into the town. They were too strong, their arrogance soaring. All the traders in town found some place to hide, fearing that they would be drawn into the strife.
Who is the person in charge here? Get out here!
A dividing soul tier of the Qin clan shouted loudly. Feng Peyun, Murong Qing, and Ling Han walked out together.
Suddenly, Fu Gaoyun's eyes widened. He rubbed his eyes, as if he had seen a ghost. Chapter 2407. Chairperson of Alchemy City. Daring to harm members of our Qin clan, you people are truly outrageously bold, that dividing soul-tier elite of the Qin clan stated coldly. Though he was only a young soul, how could that not be enough to suppress mere severing mundane tier? Just average, Ling Han replied, smiling. Humph, today, young Master Yun is also here. We will give you a chance. Kowtow and beg for forgiveness, then agree to the conditions that we have previously set, and we will spare your lives. That young soul elite of the Qin clan declared. Otherwise, this town will be pacified, and whether male or female, young or old, everyone will be executed. Execute your head. Fu Gaoyun suddenly flipped out, grabbing hold of that young soul elite and thrashing him immediately. Firstly, he was superior by 2 minor levels, and secondly, he had the aptitude of a king tier, so how could the other party be his match? Thirdly, which was also the most important point, if the young master of the Fu clan wanted to beat anyone up, would the latter dare to dodge? But no one from the Qin clan knew why this young lord had suddenly flipped out. Could it be that he had lost his senses? But young Master Fu was presently at the height of his temper. So who would dare try to play mediator? They were all feeling uneasy, hoping that young Master Fu would quickly stop his rage. Otherwise, what if he did some even stranger actions, like *** or something? Who could take that? Brother Ling. After Fu Gaoyun had beaten up that young soul elite of the Qin clan, he was immediately all smiles as he raced towards Ling Han. Oh no, young Master Fu was really quite ill, actually calling someone brother. This was young master of the Fu clan, the heir of a 3-star force, and he actually called a member of a mere severing mundane tier force brother. He was probably so ill that his brain had been burnt out, right? But realization still dawned on some of the smarter ones. They felt like their **TT cheeks were actually trembling, terrified beyond description. Ling Han nodded. You're living quite well, having gotten so many lackeys. Fu Gaoyun was almost scared to death, and hurriedly exclaimed, Brother Ling, don't tease me. How could these be my lackeys? We were just going the same way, and there is absolutely no relation between us at all. He drew a clear, distinct dividing line between them, naturally because of who Ling Han was. Who was Ling Han? Aside from his freakish talent, merely in terms of status, he was the chairperson of Alchemy City. He was the leader of a 4-star force. To say nothing of himself, even if his old man came, he would still have to be very respectful towards Ling Han. It could be claimed that the fact that he had been able to become the only heir, when he had only been one of them, was also because of his relation with Ling Han. Then it was naturally easy for him to take sides. Furthermore, the reason why he had come was indeed because he was too bored. What friendship did he have with the Qin clan? The people of the Qin clan were all dumbfounded. In their eyes, Fu Gaoyun was the greatest big shot in the world, but just in the blink of an eye, this young Master Fu became an obedient child. Their eyeballs were practically about to pop out of their heads in their shock. This, just who exactly was this young man? He was a little too terrifying, wasn't he? Fu Gaoyun turned his head, and immediately shouted at them fiercely. Get over here and pay your greetings to Brother Ling. Gee, greetings, Brother Ling. Though the members of the Qin clan were still dazed, how could they possibly disregard the words of Fu Gaoyun? They hurriedly lowered their heads and bowed. Merely Fu Gaoyun alone was not someone they could trifle with. What more when Ling Han seemed to have an even more powerful background? Ling Han chuckled. I would not dare presume. Aren't these people here to get revenge? Brother Ling, please don't harbor any grievances. Fu Gaoyun hurriedly mediated the strife. If Alchemy City really raged because of this matter, then to say nothing of the fact that Qin clan would be finished, even their Fu clan would not be having a good time either. Now he could put himself in the shoes of the clan leader of Fu clan to consider problems, or his reaction would definitely have been, it has nothing to do with me, so why do I need to interfere? Ling Han looked meaningfully at Fu Gaoyun. They had parted for several tens of thousands of years, and this guy had also grown enough not in cultivation level, but rather mindset. He nodded. Fine then, this matter is considered over and done with. Thank you, Brother Ling. Fu Gaoyun was overjoyed, and then delivered a series of punches and kicks at the members of Qin clan. What are you guys waiting for? Hurry up and thank my brother Ling.
Thank you for your magnanimous generosity, Brother Ling.
Everyone hurriedly bowed down again.
Ling Han did not like this kind of thing, so let them stand back up with a wave of his hand. Gao Yun, since you are already here, let's have a cup of tea.
Ling Han turned and left.
Fu Gaoyun agreed, and was just about to walk forwards when he heard the other dividing soul tier elite of the Qin clan ask, Young Master Yun, who exactly is this brother Ling? This question also caused a great many members of the Qin clan to prick up their ears.
They were too curious.
Even Fu Gaoyun would lower his head and bow to this guy, so just how powerful would his background have to be? At first, Fu Gaoyun was planning to ignore them as these people had almost caused him a heart attack, but upon further thought, to prevent them from causing further trouble, he asked, Do you all know of the Alchemy City?
Everyone nodded.
As long as they were cultivators, there was no one who did not know of Alchemy City. That was the holy land for all alchemists, and practically every single alchemist would have come from the Alchemy City.
Brother Ling is the new chairperson of Alchemy City.
Fu Gaoyun threw a bombshell at them. Boom! Every member of the Qin clan was gaping in shock, feeling their heads go numb and a chill take over their whole bodies. As it turned out, Ling Han's background was actually so astonishing.
Everyone was terrified.
This was the new chairperson of Alchemy City, who had overwhelming authority and power. Still, Ling Han was a little too young, wasn't he? He looked completely like a young brat, so it was hard to believe. But if that wasn't the case, how could Fu Gaoyun need to be so humble in front of him? Everyone was feeling even more anxious. If Ling Han was not willing to let go of the issue, he would only need to say a few words, and it was guaranteed that there would be a lot of people that would come to destroy the Qin clan. Who did not want to curry favor with an alchemist? What more when Ling Han was also the leader of the field of alchemy of the Eastern Celestial Realm? Even celestial kings would probably have to give him some face when they saw him. The members of the Qin clan hurriedly followed them in, begging for Ling Han's forgiveness again. Ling Han was very irritated, and tossed them all out. The members of the Qin clan all felt very uneasy, and could not calm their emotions no matter what. Meanwhile, Ling Han entertained Fu Gaoyun. The relations between this brat and Ling Han were considered quite amicable. Immediately, he shamelessly called his sister over as well, along with the weirdo, Situ Xiaozhen. When Fu Xiaoyun saw Ling Han, she first curtsied respectfully, sighing internally. This predestined chance was really missed. Otherwise, if she had expressed true love and affection for Ling Han, who knew, she might have been able to become one of his women. Since Situ Xiaozhen was a weirdo, her behavior was naturally out of the norm. She surveyed Ling Han for a while, and then asked curiously, With how many wives you have, where do you find the time? Even if Ling Han was already extraordinarily shameless, he couldn't help but flush when he heard this. This was truly a female hooligan. From the look of things, there was no chance of changing ever. He acted like he had not heard her, and simply toasted cups with Fu Gaoyun and drinking. He stayed for a few days in Separation Resentment City. The higher-ups of the Fu clan all came to pay him a visit one after another, and for Fu Gaoyun's sake, Ling Han also entertained them. However, Yu Jinshan and the others were not willing to leave with Ling Han to the Western Celestial Realm. They were already accustomed to living here, and even Feng Piyun and Murong Qing already had their respective lovers, and were no longer willing to just roam the world again. Ling Han expressed that he would respect their wishes. Ling Dongxing and his wife also expressed that they would like to stay here. After all, there were people that they knew here, so it could be considered their hometown. Ling Han nodded. There was only one thought in his head now: to help his parents and the others reach the peak stage of the ascending origin tier in 30,000 years as much as possible. Then, when he concocted Celestial King pills, everyone could become Celestial Kings, and he could also head to a transcendent dimension without any lingering worries. Chapter 2408. Heaven Forbidden. Ling Han began to conduct special training for everyone. Wally helped. He was particularly skilled in studying the power of heaven and earth, and could avoid some necessary barriers to cultivation level. For example, a severing mundane tier would have to go to a severing mundane type mystery realm, and dividing soul tier would have to go to other mystery realms. In such a manner, the time of 30,000 years would not be enough for him at all.
The opening of mystery realms was not something that was arbitrarily decided by anyone. With Wally helping, they could avoid all this. In any case, Ling Han already owed this guy quite a bit. Furthermore, the former did indeed possess a great many Celestial King tier ingredients, such as the Green Song Divine Sword, Celestial King tier rings, as well as a small piece of divine metal, which was enough to pay off the debt. Thus, Wally was also working very hard in calculations and predictions, looking for a way to avoid these natural mystery realms.
This was something that perhaps even heavenly venerates could not do, but it was possible for Wally because he was a creation that a dimension had expended resources gathered for several hundred epochs to create, definitely the most concentrated essence of it all.
True enough, not long later, Wally produced a proposal. This would require the power of heaven and earth to forcefully raise their cultivation levels. The power of heaven and earth was superior to regulations. Ling Han looked at the proposal. Either a heavenly venerate would have to move, helping to guide in some mystical power of heaven and earth, or he would have to use the dimension scroll, absorbing some of the power within to be guided into the body of the recipient. The first method was safe, but where would he find a heavenly venerate to help him out? Though both Wu Lu and Zhou Heng looked highly on him, it did not mean that Ling Han could ask for their help in everything. Moreover, this was not just 1 or 2 times, but would be a great many times. Hence, Ling Han decided to do it himself. He cultivated earnestly, pouring all kinds of resources into himself, and was blazing through ancestral king blood essence like it was worth nothing. 3,000 years later, he had finally done a preliminary tempering of source power. The origin power in his body was practically all converted into source power, but it was not pure. Ascending origin tier, great accomplishment level. Next, he still had to continuously temper source power, as well as extract the source power of heaven and earth for his own use, accumulating the amount of source power at his disposal. Once the doors to great accomplishment level were open, his body art had also further improved, his vitality index soaring all the way to 4,800. Going by the look of things now, there was really a chance that he would possess Celestial King tier battle prowess at consummate level. If this was revealed, there was definitely no one who would believe it. How could an ascending origin tier actually match a Celestial King, even if the latter was the weakest Celestial King? The others' cultivation levels were also spiking madly, with Ling Han, the Alchemy Emperor, endlessly pouring alchemical pills on them, as well as Wally's guidance on knowledge that surpassed this dimension. If their advancement through the cultivation levels was still not fast enough, they would really have to apologize for their failings. Ling Han was very gratified. Even his parents and the others, whose natural talent was only average, were rapidly raising their cultivation levels, but to reach consummate level ascending origin tier within 40,000 years was still difficult. 40,000 years later, he would definitely be leaving. In that case, he could only concoct the Celestial King pill and hand it over to his parents and the others so that they could consume it on their own. He was sure that there should be no problems with the protection of Grandmaster Zi Cheng and the others. And he had finally concocted the first Celestial King tier alchemical pill, which raised a commotion in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. How many hundreds of millions of years had it been? Finally, a 5-star Grandmaster had emerged from the Eastern Celestial Realm. Naturally, it was like the entire Alchemy City had gone crazy. The whole city was all celebrating, and naturally had to hold a massive banquet to honor this, inviting various important people to participate. Every Celestial King had received an invitation, and most Celestial Kings decided to attend, giving them face. Thai had also received data on Ling Han. He was a Supreme Monarch star, and not only would he definitely become a 9th Heaven Celestial King, he could possibly even become a Heavenly Venerate. Just for the sake of Ling Han's potential, the great Celestial Kings would have to make investments for developing a good relationship with him. Hence, when it was time for the grand banquet, a great many Celestial Kings arrived. It was not like how Ling Han had ascended to the position of chairperson, when the Celestial King tier forces had only sent a representative. In comparison, it was clear what great changes had taken place in Ling Han's present status now. In Alchemy City, everyone was rejoicing. With a chairperson like this, they were naturally feeling extremely proud. Even Xie Yongbing had submitted completely. Ling Han was actually a 5-star Grandmaster. This was an existence that even he had to look up to.
Perhaps with another epoch, he could become a 5-star Grandmaster himself, but that was only a possibility, and was also a matter that was too far ahead in the future. There were also some big shots among the celestial kings that arrived, such as the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King. He was an 8th Heaven Celestial King, and was one of the strongest elites of the 8th Heaven Celestial King tier. He had brought Yan Xianlu with him, and made a personal appearance, giving Ling Han enough face.
Brother Ling. Yan Xianlu was also delighted. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Ling Han nodded with a smile. He had heard these words in the recent days too much, so much that his ears were practically going numb.
What cultivation level are you in now? Can you make the deadline for 30,000 years later? Yan Xianlu asked.
Only now was Ling Han interested, and he replied, there should be no problem. His main worry was not the advancement through the cultivation levels, but rather the ingredients for concocting the Celestial King pill. Now he had expanded his sources of income because concocting the Celestial King pill required a frightening amount of resources. Even if he robbed a great many foreign realm ancestral kings of their wealth, it would still not be enough.
It could not be helped.
There were a lot of things from the foreign realm that could not be used here. With different regulations, different power of heaven and earth, there was too much of a gap.
Yan Xianlu looked around the surroundings, and then said softly, I've just gotten news. Some people plan to snipe you on the celestial path. Ling Han smiled. Oh really?
Celestial kings could not step on the celestial path, so when Ling Han reached the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, merely his battle prowess in terms of regulations would be enough to defeat all ascending origin tiers. What more when it was extremely possible that his body art would reach the Celestial King tier.
Without Celestial Kings, who could match him? Brother Ling, you must not be careless.
There are truly some super monsters among these people, who have long since possessed the strength to defeat all ascending origin tiers millions and millions of years ago. However, because the celestial path has not opened yet, they were unable to advance into the Celestial King tier, Yan Xianlu said solemnly. After tempering their strength for so many years, their power is unfathomable. There are a few that even possess some of the power of the Celestial King tier.
Instantly, Ling Han's interest peaked. Really?
Yan Xianlu really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Your opponent is almost heaven-defyingly strong, and you actually look very excited?
It should be known that they are targeting you.
According to my master, those people can enter a state which is known as Heaven Forbidden. In the state of Heaven Forbidden, it would be equivalent to having become Celestial Kings. There will be no ascending origin tier that will be a match for them, he hurriedly warned.
Ling Han was becoming more and more interested. Heaven Forbidden. What kind of state is that?
I don't know, but only monarch tiers who have reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and have settled countless years, would be able to grasp Heaven Forbidden, Yan Xianlu said. With differing natural talent in cultivation, the time period that they can maintain Heaven Forbidden differs as well. Ling Han gave an "oh," a sliver of a smile on his face, but his fighting spirit was already blazing fiercely.
He wanted to battle this kind of opponent.
In the younger generation, though Shi Chanzi and Jia Lan were honored as monarch stars, there was no way they could enter into the state of Heaven Forbidden, because of the time they had to settle. However, Ji Wuming definitely could. That was because he was the reincarnation of the strongest 9th Heaven Celestial King, so he had to have grasped this state.
Ling Han could battle with Ji Wuming again. Ling Han's blood bubbled fervently.
Throughout his journey, only Ji Wuming could give him extreme pressure, and he valued this opponent very much as well.
Yan Xianlu could only remain silent.
His original intention had been to warn Ling Han, but he had forgotten that this guy was the type to hunger for battle.
Chang Zixin, Fu Zhou, and the other monarch tiers also arrived gradually.
Coincidentally, they had originally been in the Saintly Origin Academy, and just happened to return for some affairs.
Otherwise, they would definitely have missed this great event. Ling Han sipped tea and chatted with them.
Their reunion lasted for over a month, and only then did they part again. He began to focus his full attention on cultivation.
You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel.
Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.